For me, the purpose of having a discussion about something a lot of times is to explore it, I'm not trying to debate to win.
Right.
Because the fact is like, I can't actually go in and confirm the data. I don't care if Fox News put it out, CNN, MSNBC.
Right.
I can't confirm that data. Like, how did they spin it? Like, I've done enough, like, just working in the government to play with numbers and do the different things that we do to make a story. I think a lot of times there's skepticism from any side, whether it's the left or the right. You can't prove to me with your evidence that there's no God, and you can't prove to me that there is. Like, you just have to accept that this is something that's very personal to people. Sure. I know some of the smartest people I've ever known are deeply religious, and some of the dumbest people I know have been deeply religious, and vice versa. I just think it's one of those things. For me, my personal journey is, I think I was still calling myself a Christian probably up until like 2006 or so. I was kind of disappointed with the first term that I thought once he went in there, he was going to change. And then, one reporter asked a question that he doesn't like, and he's like, "You're an idiot," Right. And like, there's always people that love that, right? Like, right? Because they're still thinking of things in us versus them. Right. But I think for a lot of America, we're not thinking us versus them. It's just us. And we need to, it's not about holding hands and all agreeing on everything, but at a certain point, we got to stop calling each other names, and we need to be.
Welcome to another life-changing episode of the Why Can't We Talk About That podcast. I hope you all enjoyed last week's special bonus episode with Chris Lambert, as we discussed his brand new album, Be Great, which if you haven't purchased yet, you better get on that. Also, just so you know, Chris will be playing songs from his new album, among other songs, live this Saturday at Humdinger Brewing in San Luis. Show starts at 7. Today we are back to our regularly scheduled programming, and I have an awesome discussion for you. But first, don't forget to tell everyone that you know about this podcast. Even tell people you don't know. Stand out on the street and declare to the world that the Why Can't We Talk About That podcast needs to be heard by the masses. Also, don't forget to send me an email at whycan'twetallaboutthat@proton.me. Even if it's just to ask me how my day is going. It makes me feel good. We all need a little of that, right? Just do it. It might just stop me from sobbing. Lastly, if you have been listening to this show and hoping and praying for the opportunity to be a guest, your hopes and prayers could be answered by simply reaching out and saying, "Hey Ryan, what does it take to be a guest on the show?" Then I would respond back, and we would go from there. It's amazing. Just like today's guest, whose name is Chet Cooper. After about a bazillion years of service, Chet has recently retired from the Airforce. He has lived all over the world and has had many amazing adventures. But before all that, he was one of my best friends from childhood, and we had many amazing adventures of our own. Many times on this show, I have told the story about how I came to love punk rock music through watching Bad Religion open up for Pearl Jam in Golden Gate Park in San Francisco back in like 1994. And Chet just happened to be with me at that historic time in my life. Chet is a smart guy and has really thought out his reasons for what he believes, which makes for some great conversation that I hope you will appreciate. After this episode, I had to research some things. Among them are whether or not Gandhi was married, which it turns out that he was, and also the proper pronunciation of the word data/data. You have heard me mention this dilemma before, and I have even thrown in the possibility of the pronunciation data. I am still not any closer to knowing for sure which is correct, and Chet likes to use data and data interchangeably, which doesn't really help me. But I still think we need to make the third option of data become more prominent. Reach out and let me know what you think, but in the meantime, enjoy the conversation.
All right,
oh, there you are. I can see your beautiful face now, man.
What's up, man? It's so good to see you.
Yeah, man. It's been forevers. So what I've kind of been doing with season 3 is just kind of getting a little background. I mean, obviously we've known each other for a million years. When did we meet? It was like junior high, right? If I'm remembering correctly.
I think so. I was at a tennis tournament. I played.
Yes.
I played your uncle.
My uncle Les, probably,
Les.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I played your uncle, and then somehow, like, I don't know what happened. Like I think your dad and my dad got our numbers, and then we played tennis a couple times, and then we
Yeah.
became,
Yeah, I
biggest
remember
thieves.
going over there to your clubhouse there and thinking, man, this guy's got the riches. This guy, he's living.
The one that I was no longer a member of, and we kept getting kicked out.
That's right. That was awesome.
Or
Oh my
hopping the fence,
gosh.
and like,
Oh
ooh,
man.
maybe we could get a set in before we get
Right,
before we
right.
get fired.
Oh, that was epic, man. Yeah.
Oh,
So we did that, and then we became really good friends in high school,
yeah,
and we played on the tennis team together.
yeah.
So that yeah. So then we did a lot of crazy, crazy, crazy fun stuff throughout high school. Almost died a few times. That was awesome, and I got a lot of memories at your parents' house and all that kind of stuff. But and then after high school, you went into the military. Was that
Yeah,
straight
pretty
out of
much.
high school?
No, I did. I did a semester of at Allen Hancock,
Okay.
community college there.
Mm-hmm.
I did and by the way, my friend Tellefson, you remember him?
Oh yeah.
I just got back in touch with him after.
Oh
not
no
talking
way!
to him
I've
for
always
over
wondered
a
what happened to
decade.
that guy.
And he's now a professor at Allen Hancock.
Oh, so he still lives in the area?
He just moved back, so you
Oh,
might see.
okay.
He actually lives on the same road that he lived on Primrose
Primrose.
over there
Okay.
in Forkett. Yeah.
I was just over there yesterday. Yeah. How funny.
I think he lives in the house he grew up in. Like his mom's renting it out to him or
Crazy.
something.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
I was going to say, if he's been living here this whole time, I'm surprised I haven't bumped into him.
Now he's been all over. He's like Chicago, LA, but sorry, where was I
Man.
going with this?
I
forgot the
don't
question.
remember.
Sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. We leave room for brain farts too, because there's lots of those. I have those all the
Yeah.
time. I'll go on rabbit trails like big time. So yeah. So we're talking about after high school.
Oh,
you
sorry,
went into
community
a semester.
college, Allen Hancock.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did it. I did a semester, and like it was one of those things where I realized really early on, like I'm doing the same BS that I was doing in high school. I am
Nice.
not ready to grow up,
Yeah.
and that's when I decided to join the Air Force. So
Okay. Because your dad was Air Force, right?
he was like for 6 years, like way before I was born. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I thought he was a lifer in there too. No.
No, he worked out at the base at Vandenberg. He was a contractor.
Okay.
He programmed like the communications with the weather satellites at Vandenberg.
Okay. Okay. And how's he? He's doing okay?
Yeah, he's still kicking. He's
Okay.
he's getting older, and
Yeah, he's in his.
every time I talk to him, he tells me about his like medical history and all those things that are going on. Well, the doctor says, well, after 30 minutes, he's like, "Is this Chet?" No, I'm kidding. He's-
That's
I didn't
awesome,
have a
dude.
son. I didn't want a son.
man. I got some great memories with that guy too, man. We had some fun with him.
Captain Ron.
Oh man. Remember? Do you remember? Okay, maybe I don't know if you remember this, but it was one of the times that I think I was staying at your house or something, and we were over there. I think we went to pick up some pizza, and that was back before cell phones, and they had
Right.
the wireless phones, right?
Yeah, the
Remember
cordless
those?
phones.
The
Yeah,
cordless phones, and the one at your house, other conversations from under phone lines would break into it all the time.
Yeah.
Do you remember this?
You get some co-channel interference.
Yes. And there was a time when your dad was talking about like these people were like talking like dirty to each other.
Oh yeah, our next door
remember this?
neighbor. He
Okay.
found out that our next door neighbor was having an affair on her husband
My God.
through co-channel interference on our cordless phone.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
And I remember him briefly mentioning it, and we were like begging him to tell us like what was being said because we were like 14 or 15 at the time.
We
or
didn't have a lot
something,
going on.
Right, exactly. Right.
I
yeah.
need this, Dad.
And then he finally was kind of telling us, and we were laughing so hard. It was like, oh my gosh, really? People really talk like that?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Well, it was funny because they were very like they kind of put on airs like they were like this, perfect American family is how they
Mhm.
always acted. They kind of had their noses up a little bit.
Mhm.
And so it was like at that time when I was young, it was ironic. Now that I've lived life a bit longer, I'm like, par for the course,
Right. Yeah. we all kind of do that to some extent, right?
Right. You kind
Yeah.
of figure it out.
Well, that's the thing everybody's always talking about. Oh, I wish so I had like so and so's got it like this and so much better than me. It's like, no, you don't understand. So and so's probably jacked up behind closed doors.
Yeah. Well, and there's a couple ways to look at it. One way is to look at it like, yeah, they're jacked up, so
Uh-huh.
I don't like them. Or like, and I think I went through a period of life, in my life where I kind of viewed people that way. Like, oh, I see we're all flawed, so therefore you don't earn my respect or whatever.
Right.
Which is a really pretentious way to act, honestly. And
Yeah.
I think now I've kind of transformed more into like showing grace to people, because I know that no matter whatever they're putting off, whatever maybe false confidence or air of superiority or even like narcissism or toxicity, there's something behind it, and they're probably suffering.
Sure.
And not probably, they are definitely suffering.
Yeah.
Because people that aren't suffering generally are kind.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And I think that comes with just getting older and wisdom and just kind of understanding our own. It's really, for me, it comes from understanding myself.
Yeah,
right.
Same. Yeah.
Right. When you truly start to really like understand who you are as a person, and you start to be honest with who you are, and it's like, oh man, I'm not.
It's a mind F, isn't it? Like I've got a friend that's kind of struggling with just some things with life right now, and usually where I find myself talking about isn't like, oh, well, like this helped this person or this helped that person. It's almost always like the light bulb went on for me when I decided to get honest, like truly honest with myself about this, this struggle or this aspect of life. Yeah. And that's been the key in every single issue that I've dealt with and that I'm still dealing with and trying to, struggle through, is like, okay, at some point I got to get real with myself about this. Right. This ain't working.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So you go into the Air Force. Now, when you went into the Air Force, were you planning for that to be like a lifelong career, or were you just kind of like, I'll go do my 4 years and get out?
Yeah, I was thinking 4 years, like college money, the Montgomery GI Bill, like all the things some skills, some discipline, all the things I could get out of it. And then I went and got married and immediately a father, and then of course 9/11 happened, and my whole perspective at that point changed quite a bit, because it wasn't about me anymore. It was more about like, I needed to provide for my family, and I had this really secure way of doing it. But also after 9/11, trying to remember, I think I had re-enlisted once already.
Oh, wow.
When 9/11, No, I hadn't. So I hadn't even re-enlisted yet. So it was after 9/11 that I decided to stay in the Air Force for at least, 4 to 6 more years. Okay. And that was, that was really not a hard decision, because I was pretty pumped up to at least, serve.
Sure. Sure.
Like a lot of people were.
Yeah. That kind of lit a fire under a lot of people's butts after that. So,
yeah.
So at what point did you meet your wife? Like how long so that she's from another state that you were stationed in? That's how you guys met, right?
This is a fun story. So my first duty assignment was in a place called Minot, North Dakota. Okay. Any of your other U.S. Air Force friends will go, why not Minot? Because it's kind of the joke, because it's known as kind of a stinker assignment. That was my first assignment. I was I worked on cruise missiles out there. Oof. And I was actually like dating girls, and this was like the selfish part of my life where I was like, it's just about what I want to do and whatever. Mm-hmm. And it didn't take long to realize that's really not my personality. It wasn't very fulfilling for me. And so the internet was pretty new back then. And being able to like afford a computer is my first purchase really in the Air Force. Like I bought a computer for like whatever they cost back then, like $2,000 or something. Yeah. Yeah. I bought a computer, and it could do, the dial up, all that stuff. And I started going on America Online. You remember America Online Instant Messenger?
Yes, AIM, I do.
Right?
That's old school.
I started going on AIM, no dating app, no dating site, no, none of that.
No Tinder back then.
No Tinder, no Grindr. it was strictly just, you'd meet people. And back in those days, it was really novel to be able to speak to somebody from another state or another country. Right. And so I was fascinated by that. And I was just, I kind of made these online friends, and like, hey, how's it going? Like a 55-year-old woman, or, 23-year-old guy in Texas or whatever. And then I ran across Felicia, and we just started talking, and immediate chemistry. Didn't know what was behind it, but there was something there. And 6 months later, we were like kind of we thought we were in love. We thought we knew each other. Right. Found out later, after like within a year of marriage, like we really didn't know each other. But
well, how can you after 6 months? I mean,
well, when you're young, that seems like enough, Yeah. It's like, no, I know her, It's like, But then you find out after like the first few fights, like crap what I
Yeah.
do.
Oh yeah. But
But
so it was just instant messenger, meaning it was just words, or were you guys like doing like a video calls or anything?
no, video calls were out of the question with
So
dial
then
up.
how did you know? I mean, for all you knew, she was like an 85-year-old man or something that was
Yeah. Well, I went
pretending.
through a few 85-year-old men before I found Felicia.
I mean, that
I
would have
was
been kind of
I
scary for me. I mean, that would have been a little, I would have been like, okay, you better send me something. But you see, even sending me a picture wouldn't have been enough because I would have been like, you could have got that anywhere,
So we
right?
spoke a lot on the phone, and I just blindly trusted that it was real.
Oh, okay. Well, you
Yeah,
could probably
honestly.
hear at least that she was a woman. You could probably tell that much anyway.
Yeah.
Oh man. So, okay. So then you get married 6 months later. And if I remember correctly, she already had a daughter from a
Yeah. So
previous.
Chase was 3 at the time when we
Okay.
became a family,
Okay.
and so yeah, we became a family. At that point, I had I don't know if you remember, but my mom was sick. And
Yes.
so the Air Force let me switch jobs after all that training that I did. So the Air Force really does care about people. At
Mhm.
least the system tries to, right?
Right.
They let me move and switch to a completely different job, just so I could be closer to home. So we were about they sent us to Monterey, California, to there was a language school out there for the DoD, and I basically worked out there as like a paperwork guy, like an administrator. And
Okay. So gave you like a
yeah,
desk job just to get you
desk
closer
job,
to
yeah,
home.
got me closer to home,
Yeah.
and the Air Force ended up just switching me to that. Like,
Okay.
yeah, they just switched me to that because
Because that was still about a 3-hour drive, though, right? I mean, were your parents
yeah,
still
it was
in the
about,
Santa Maria area at that time?
no, they were living in just south of Yosemite, just down the mountain from Yosemite.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they had moved to a place called Coarse Gold.
Okay.
It was about an hour, 45 minutes north of Fresno, up the mountain.
Okay. Okay.
I think it's Highway 41. It goes straight from Fresno straight up into Yosemite.
Okay.
They lived over there, so we basically just drove due east over the mountain ranges. It's a beautiful
Nice.
drive, and
Yeah, it's pretty up there. Yeah. And if I remember correctly, that was the last time I think I saw you in person was when you were living in Monterey.
So yeah, that was when we were living in Monterey the second time.
Oh,
So
okay.
we lived in Monterey, and then we moved. My parents had decided to move to Virginia to be closer to more family because my mom's treatment wasn't going well, and
Right.
they were kind of seeing the end. And so we ended up taking an assignment to Florida over at the Gulf. On the
Wow.
Gulf of Florida at a place called Eglin Air Force Base. And
Okay.
so not too long after that, my mom passed. I went up, saw everybody for the memorial service. And then by 2004, 2003, I had decided I wanted to do more than just kind of be a desk jockey. And
Mhm.
so I decided to go back to Monterey, but this time I was going to go to that language school
Oh,
and
nice.
actually learn a language. So
Okay. Okay.
so I went back and that's when we saw you last. As I was
Okay. Yeah.
I believe I was in Chinese class, and we went and ate at First Awakenings over there in Monterey.
Oh, you remember the name of the place? I remember it was breakfast. I don't remember the name of the place
First
though.
Awakenings, yeah.
Okay.
Because I remember
Okay.
we went there like 3 times, and it was a little bit out of our price range, but
Oh.
we loved it.
Okay. Yeah, I remember it was really good. And I remember, so how many kids did you have at that point? Did you have
At that point, I had 2 because
two?
we had Mackenzie. She would have been pretty small at that time.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. I think I only had 2 also.
Yeah, I think your oldest is your daughter, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you
She's
had your boy.
26 now. She just turned
Yeah.
26.
Isn't that crazy?
Dude, it's insane. It's nuts, dude. I mean, because it doesn't seem like that long ago that I was 26.
Right? I still like sometimes forget, like, oh, I'm old.
Yeah, I know. I know. It's like in my mind, I still feel like I'm young, and then you realize how much time has gone by, and it's like, oh my gosh, dude. But we always tell my oldest that she's 26. I mean, Bethany had 2 kids by then.
Yep.
I mean, because we started so young. I mean, I was 20 when my oldest was born, and then I was like 23 when my next one was born. And
Yeah.
it's crazy, dude. So,
Yep. Same.
all right. So then, okay. So then you're in, you guys are in Monterey. I know there's probably a lot in here. I mean, we don't need to go through all of it. Obviously, we're talking 20 plus years of military service. So, I mean, you guys are all over the place. So, I mean, so just give me kind of rundown of the different places. Well, no, first let's go back. You talking about, and again, with the language thing, I know that a lot of the work that you were doing is kind of on the down low, right? Like it was, I remember you telling me you'd have to kill me if you told me some of the stuff you were
No,
doing.
actually, I want to kind of tell you everything, and to whoever's
Oh,
listening to this, all of it. No, I'm
oh,
kidding.
good, good. Let's hit it, man. Let's all get in trouble.
I can tell you this. I learned Chinese,
Okay.
and the jobs that I did a lot of different jobs. Some
Yeah.
of them involved using the Chinese language. The language was a foundation. I never did a job where my job was just to know Chinese.
Oh,
There was
okay.
always a whole bunch more school, technology, and different things I had to learn to then use the language is kind of like the foundation. So if
Okay.
you imagine like you have to learn like math, like calculus before you can really master physics.
Right.
Like Chinese is like the basic skill, and then you have to go learn how to employ it and all this stuff.
Okay.
But most of the jobs I did were basically to keep aircraft and forces that we were supporting safe.
Okay.
And I'm allowed to say that. So
And I got to tell you, if there's anybody on the planet who doesn't look like they could speak Chinese, it's you.
I've gotten that before.
I mean, but what a perfect that's perfect because no one would ever. I mean, it's like this. There's no way this guy knows what we're saying.
Quick story. I was in Australia. I'd had a lot of drinks with a friend, and we decided like we pointed out in Sydney, Australia. We pointed at like the tallest building. They have like a sky needle, kind of like Seattle.
Like Seattle. Okay.
Yeah, and so we're like, let's go there. So we jump on like the monorail, the public transit, and like we'd been drinking, and there's nothing but Chinese. Like there's actually a big Chinese population there in Sydney, so there's
Really?
nothing but Chinese people sitting here. So I'm just like blah 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 blah, rapping, and they were like, "What the?"
Yeah, I
Kidding.
bet, man.
But yeah, they were tripping. They were like, "What?" I think
Yeah.
some of them were nervous. Like, "Whoa,
Yeah, yeah.
did the government send somebody to?"
I bet I could picture all those people later on that evening having dinner with their families and telling that story.
Yeah,
You guys aren't going to believe this, man. This pasty white guy just busted out with the Chinese, like fluent Chinese. It was just unreal.
it was pretty fun. Yeah, it was pretty fun. So yeah, that I did get that a lot. Like, you don't look like you'd speak Chinese.
Right.
But,
Right.
it worked out.
So could you still, are you fluent enough still where you could like go there and get along just fine?
Yeah, I mean, I would struggle, right? I mean,
Okay.
I would absolutely struggle, right? You have to really live in a place for a while to master a language.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I've got the foundation. It wouldn't take me long to get comfortable, to be
Okay.
honest.
And was yours-
yeah, sorry.
I was gonna say, was it just speaking it alone or were you able to write it as well?
Writing Chinese is like, oh, I mean, that takes a lot.
Yeah.
I know some people that kind of got it down a little bit. Actually, my oldest daughter, Chase, she actually has it better than I do.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Because she studied for several years. But
Okay.
yeah, I'm not very good at writing. I do every once
Yeah.
in a while when I'm bored at a meeting. I'll
Well,
just
that's a
start
lot,
writing in
dude.
Chinese, but it's always
Yeah.
the same 5 sentences. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, that's it.
I was gonna say, you write like half a page, you got to take a nap.
It gets. I mean, it really does get easier when like. It's kind of weird. Like it's one of those things where I remember looking at Chinese, and it just seeming like this impossible thing, and then now it's something that I actually
Yeah.
kind of understand. But people study that language their whole lives and they don't fully master it. I mean,
Right.
it's an incredibly huge language with an incredible history.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so then let's just kind of fast forward to now. So you've been all over the place. I know that already.
Yeah.
You lived in Hawaii. You lived in.
Not
Where
Hawaii,
else?
but I've gone to Hawaii. Several times.
I thought you lived in Hawaii. No.
No, we lived in Okinawa. That's probably what you're remembering.
Oh, okay. That's like the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty much the same. Yeah. It's an island, though.
So Okinawa. So that's where Mr. Miyagi was from, dude.
Yeah, and let me tell you, that movie was so realistic.
Yeah, I bet. I bet it was just like it. Yeah,
It's
totally.
Like, have you watched Karate Kid 2, like in the last 10 years?
We have only, and let me tell you why. It's kind of a funny story why. So I grew up loving the Karate Kid movies, loving them.
Right.
All three of them. I know everybody rags on the third one, but I even liked that one. Now you get another Hilary Swank one and then the Jackie Chan, maybe not so much. But those first three were good. So I kind of showed my kids them as they're growing up, Well, my youngest daughter, who's now 16, well, okay, let me tell one part of the story. So then when Cobra Kai came out, the show Cobra Kai, right?
Yeah, that's fun.
I'm all excited. I want to watch this show. I was like, oh man, I got to see this show. This is really cool. It's like Johnny, and now he's a grown up, and now he's like dealing with all stuff. This looks awesome. I couldn't get anybody in my family to watch it with me. And I'm like, I wasn't at a stage where it's like I can just watch TV shows by myself. It's
Right.
like I'm either doing things with the family or I'm working or I'm doing all
Right.
this stuff. So it's like I'm just never going to watch it. So then my daughter, who's now 16, she starts going down this road of like 80s actors. I don't know why her friends are looking at pictures or whatever. So she decides that Ralph Macchio is the cutest guy in the world. Okay. So I'm like, okay. So now she wants to watch Karate Kid. I was like, oh, yes. And we're watching The Outsiders. Like we're watching all the old Ralph Macchio movies, right? So then we watched through those first three Karate Kids, and she's digging them mainly because he's in them, and so I'm like, oh hey, they got the show Cobra Kai. You watch the show Cobra Kai. And she's like, oh yeah. So it's because of that. So then now we watch the Cobra Kai as the whole family, right? So we're not done yet. We're still in season 5, but we've been watching through that and everything.
Nice.
But yeah. So anyway, so yes, I have recently seen Karate Kid 2 in the last year.
There's one scene in Karate Kid 2 where it shows Kadena Air Base.
Oh, really?
It's like well, it's not. It's like they put up some like wire fence around like a 400 by 400 foot area.
Okay. Oh, so it's supposed to be.
And they have like
base.
one helicopter taking off from a helipad in the middle of it, and they said Kadena Air Base.
Hey, it was low budget, man.
It's a massive place, and
okay.
There's a huge military, U.S. Military presence there, but we were there for 7 years.
Oh, dang!
Absolutely loved it. And while we were there, I was able to take the family, like Felicia, everybody. We went to mainland Japan, so we got to do that a couple times, and then I took Felicia to Taiwan once, and I took Chase, my oldest, to Taiwan once, just for to practice language and to have a cool vacation.
Okay,
but for my work, I got to go everywhere. I got to go all over, East and Southeast Asia for my job.
So fun, dude. That's so awesome.
Adventure. Yeah, it really was.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And now you're living in Ohio, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. It's just Okinawa, really.
Just like it, yeah. I've only been to Ohio once, and it was to Wilmington. I don't know if that's anywhere near where you're at, but
I'm too new to Ohio to know where places are.
That's pretty much the only city I know other than like Columbus, and I know like Cleveland. Like I know the big names, but I've never been there.
So we're really close to Columbus and Cincinnati. So we're kind of like in the southwest part of the state.
Okay.
And we absolutely love it.
It's pretty nasty and muggy there, huh, in the summertime?
It's really not that bad. Like the summer is pretty mild. I was really surprised. Yeah, because we lived in the Midwest. We lived in Nebraska for 4 years, and the summers were muggy and still and just kind of icky sometimes, right? Not enough breeze thing, but it's actually pretty mild here. It gets warm and it sometimes gets hot, but it's really not bad.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. And fireflies in the summertime?
I don't know if we've seen a lot of fireflies.
Okay. Well, how long have you guys been living in Ohio at this point?
We've been here about 1.5 years now. Almost
okay,
a year
so not that long then.
Yeah, like my retirement ceremony was in June of 23, and then we were here in Ohio by in this 4 days after my retirement ceremony. We were here in Ohio, and then I started working 2 weeks after that. So
nice.
And that's when we got into this house. So we've been in the house now for almost 1.5 years.
Okay, so you're retired from military service, but So you're working. What are you doing for work now? I'm a contractor now for the government. So so you still work for the government?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a big Air Force base here, Wright-Patterson, and I work out there. Okay,
so now you're more doing the work that your dad was doing, basically. Similar.
Well, he was in that I'm a contractor, but I work for another company called I work for a company, and then that company gets contracted by the government to provide services. Mm-hmm. My job's I'm actually a project manager, so that's something that you're probably familiar with. So it's it's fun.
Cool, man. And how many kids did you guys top out with total?
Just the three.
Okay. Yeah, and your youngest is a boy, yeah?
Yep. Yeah. My son Logan, he's 16, so same age.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's about to age up here. All my kids' birthdays are around Christmas, so they kind of got hosed for that. But
that sucks.
Yeah. Well, it sucks for us too, because we got to take a loan out every year to get
Yeah. Or you just tell them, hey, you only get one. You get Christmas, birthday. It's all in the same lump.
Make them choose.
Yeah, for sure. And Felicia, does she work outside the home or anything, or is she just?
No, yeah, she does. She's actually been carrying her job with her. She had it in Florida probably starting back in 2017. I think she got this job,
Okay.
and she's actually taken it with her remotely, and she still has it. She's basically like a case manager for elder services in Florida.
Oh,
So
wow.
most states have like programs for elderly
Yeah.
people where they
There's a
have
lot of elderly people in Florida.
yeah, absolutely. Yes, there are. And the state-sponsored services, her company or her department actually reaches out, makes contact with them, does the evaluations, and then provides them support. So she really loves it. She's been doing that really well
Nice, man.
for since 2017, I'd say.
Okay. Very cool. So and then lastly, before we kind of jump into some music stuff, so your young Logan is 16 is your youngest, and your next up
Yeah.
is Mackenzie.
Yep, she's 23.
23. My gosh,
Yeah.
dude. Dang it. And
Yeah.
Chase has got to be what, 27, 28, something like that?
She's 27. She's about to turn 28. They're all about to age up. So yeah,
Wowzers, man.
I know.
Any grandkids in the mix yet?
No, not yet. I was going to ask you
Okay.
that.
No, not yet. I mean, Alora's married. They've been married
Okay.
like about 3 years. I think 3
Okay.
years. I could be getting that wrong. So she went down to so she did Hancock for a couple years and then moved down to Biola. She went to Biola University, got her degree in psychology, and now she works with kids on the spectrum. And she loves it. That's like her calling. Her husband also went and got his degree, and he's working now. And they were living in Whittier. They ended up moving back to Santa Maria now, so now they're closer to us, which is awesome. But yeah, no grandkids yet.
Yeah.
They're doing it the right way. I'm like, what are you doing? You know, you guys like want to be settled first. I mean, come on.
I know.
You know,
It's all this responsibility.
yeah. So yeah, and then Aiden is our next youngest first boy. He's 22. I think he's 22. Yeah,
Kids are like the same ages. That's crazy.
I know it's gnarly, dude. It's nuts. So so he moved out for a while, and then he's back with us now, and he's just working and kind of doing his thing.
Yeah.
He's the one that was doing music for a while, and I wish he would get back into music because he had some really cool stuff.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and then we got a 16-year-old daughter that I already told you about, and then a 14-year-old son, and he's our youngest.
Oh, okay.
So
Wow.
yeah, yep, fun times, man. So
Well, congratulations. It sounds like
yeah.
been an adventure.
Well, always, right? It's always an adventure. I mean, and you look, and again, going back to when we used to hang out in high school, I mean, to imagine that the two of us would be the lives we're living right now, we would have never in a million years. Like, there's no way. It's never going to happen.
I thought we'd be having this conversation through like prison phones or something.
Right. Yeah. Or one of us would be dead. I mean, one or the other, right? So cool, man. All right. Well, we're going to jump into some music stuff first. That's usually the first topic I go with. Just kind of, because I mean, I know we obviously have a musical history, the two of us. And some of it, I don't know if you remember, but some of it's pretty funny.
A lot of it's funny.
Yeah, it is pretty funny, dude. But like, so kind of like, I like to go back as early as you can. Like, tell me like the first time you ever remember appreciating music. Like, obviously we all grew up listening to it. Our parents listened to it, but like, what was the first time you were like, oh man, that's the good stuff right there?
Yeah, that's a really, I don't know if you remember, but I was kind of weird as a teenager. I started to like everything really early on.
Yeah.
You know, and I think a lot of us that really appreciate like art, music, you kind of become really flexible because you see the beauty and the art in different, mediums. But I was kind of early with that. So I was listening to like 50s and 60s, like, doo-wop music on the radio, because they you should would tell some of your younger audience that you should actually listen to the radio.
Right.
And they would push out music over radio frequencies, and you would listen to it.
You'd have to wait for your favorite song to come on for hours sometimes.
And then hit record.
Yes,
really
with a little cassette tape. Yeah.
So I really started to kind of love music, I think, pretty early on as a teenager, kind of once I got out of like the Marky Mark and like,
oh, nice.
Like some of the Ice, Vanilla Ice.
Vanilla Ice, yeah.
After I kind of broke away from pop, I guess you could say, kind of early on. And then it's just been like, I just have gone through so many different phases of loving different types of music from, And almost every genre has like a period that I love and a period that I just can't really listen to.
Okay.
Depending on how poppy it gets.
Okay. So let's pick a genre then and see what you
Yeah.
give me something that you just pick a genre that you like and
Okay.
tell me something in that genre that you just love and something you can't stand.
Sure. I'll kind of give you a little chronological story and
All
I'll
right.
hit all those things. So,
Cool.
country music, right? I
Hmm.
remember listening to my dad, Captain Ron,
Yes.
listening to country music in his car, and I hated it. It was just
Yeah.
old and stupid and twangy and like her,
Yeah. Yeah.
we made fun of him for it, and he used to
Of
get so
course. Rightly so.
um, and then I met Felicia, and she's from the South. She grew up in
Mm.
Texas and in Alabama, and she was living in Alabama when I met her when I was up in North Dakota. And then my roommate in North Dakota was like he was aspiring to be a country musician, so like he played guitar all the time, and we sang together. So I started to really love country. And some of it was good, some of it wasn't so good. Some of it was starting
Okay.
to get into that like real poppy country.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then years later, I probably didn't, we kind of stopped listening to country for a while. And I would say now, really for the last probably 15 years, I love classic country. Anything from like the 1940s and 50s to
Oh, okay.
even some of the stuff in like the early 2000s.
Oh,
There's kind of like,
that's a big thing.
yeah,
That's a big
there's certain musicians that I could still listen to
Okay.
from like the early 2000s. But I just love it. Like George Strait,
Hmm.
Garth Brooks,
Yeah. Yeah.
Hank Williams Jr., Hank Williams, like, all these guys,
Yeah.
Willie Nelson, Merle
Yeah.
Haggard. I
See,
love,
that's the stuff I love more is like the Hank
yeah,
Williams Sr. and the
yeah.
kind of like Johnny Cash kind of stuff.
And for me, it's a lot like hip hop, like I
Mm.
really still love like old rap from like the 80s and 90s. And I think
Yeah.
what it was like those genres of music really touch on something because the people that were writing them, they were writing stories that were like real to them that people needed to hear at the time. They needed to get it out, they needed to hear it. It was, written from some kind of pain or,
Hmm.
the challenging circumstances they were in. And that's where the art comes from is from struggle.
Right.
And I think what happens with any genre of music, right, is like anything that comes like from that, eventually it gets, monopolized
Yeah.
or sorry, it gets,
Commercialized.
capitalism takes
Yeah.
over and, people are just trying to, obviously they're trying to do their best to keep it going, but it
Right.
kind of loses that edge and it loses that purity, I think.
Yeah.
And those are two genres that are hard for me to listen to. And really what you listen to now that's successful from hip hop and from country, that doesn't really
Yeah.
it doesn't sound very much like old country or hip hop. It's morphed into
No.
more of a pop.
Well, and
And
it's
some of
terrible. It's
yeah,
just terrible. A lot of the newer like rap music and hip hop music is just terrible.
yeah,
Like it's not even. I mean, a lot of the lyrics are terrible anyway. I mean, of course,
yeah,
the lyrics back in our day weren't exactly wholesome either, but it's like at least they were saying something.
yeah,
Now it's like they're not even saying anything, and it's just
yeah.
stupid. And not only that, but to me, it's like there's not a whole lot of talent there.
Yeah, I
But
mean, it's like anything. It becomes, they invent these like production factories, right? So
mhm,
like everything can be turned into a science, and you figure out, okay, this is a winning formula for building a hip hop musician, and you
right,
get enough people doing that, and you start to lose that artistic, I guess
mhm,
that core, that foundation,
right,
right? And I
right,
think you see that in all types of art, and I think with specifically with those genres that were really inspired from, I don't know, from a certain economic struggles and, the challenges of the world. I think you see it more with those. I don't
yeah,
know.
for sure,
But yes, country's been it's always been a love hate. So I
yeah,
just listen to this stuff I want because Spotify, like
yeah.
all these mediums are great now. I don't have to listen to crap. I just listen to the stuff I like
There
and
you go. There you go.
wonderful.
It's a beautiful technological world we live in. Um, yeah, and I think probably the earliest we go back as far as music was probably rap and hip hop. Like that's what kind of brought us
Some of it was
together.
pretty bad too.
Oh yeah, yeah, we were listening. I don't remember what was it like back. Too Short,
Too
probably.
short and gosh, a lot of it was crap.
A
Yeah.
lot of it was like Bay Area stuff that we
Yeah.
Amp Banks, Too Short, Spice One, you know,
Dangerous crew, dog.
yeah, exactly, exactly, dude. I mean, but then of course we had the LA stuff, you know, Eazy-E, and then later in the
Yeah.
90s you had Dre and Snoop and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I've told, I assume you're gonna remember this because it was pretty significant. But usually when I talk about music on here and I talk about how punk rock is my favorite genre, and I tell the story of how I got there, I talk about how I grew up only listening to rap. Anything that wasn't rap sucked. Guitars sucked. Anything with the guitars was terrible. And then it wasn't until the 90s when the grunge thing hit, right? And you had the Nirvanas and the Alice in Chains and the Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, that kind of stuff. And that really got me into all that. Well, then I went to a concert, which you were at with me.
Bad Religion, baby.
Yes.
That's
yes, right.
The best live music I've ever heard in my life.
But we didn't go to see Bad Religion. Remember, it was a Pearl Jam show, right? Yeah. So we were at Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, and I've told, like I said, I've told this story so many times, but now I have the person who was actually at the show with me on the show, and I didn't even know who Bad Religion was. I had heard the name before, but when they opened for Pearl Jam, I was just floored. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing ever.
I was too. We loved it. It was just such, they're fan. I still listen to them all the time.
Oh, me too. Yeah. Yes. It's one of my favorite bands of all time. And I credit them with pushing me towards, because after that I would start, first of all, I came back to Santa Maria and I bought pretty much every album I could get my hands on by Bad Religion. But then I started buying a bunch of like punk rock, like compilation albums, and that was leading me and all these other places. And to this day, that's my favorite.
I remember
genre.
You getting really into punk. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Big time. Big time. And still am. I mean, I still listen to that 90s kind of 90s punk rock stuff. But do you remember what happened at that show? Like with Pearl Jam? Do you remember that?
I remember a lot of things that happened at that show.
Let's hear it. You might have some stuff that I can't remember.
Okay, well, I wish I would. I mean, you're only doing audio on your podcast, right?
Yes.
But
yes.
I wish people could see the what I'm about to show you. But at one point when Bad Religion was playing, you got kind of stuck over there in the mosh pit on accident. You were trying to pass through or something.
Yes.
And all I know, who was the girl we were with?
Kelly.
So Kelly and I were like hanging out, we're like listening and kind of like dancing a little bit, you know. And we're watching, and then I see you, and you're like, help. And you're like, your face is against the cage, and you're like, with that crazy laugh you used to do. Yeah. And you're like getting smashed into the cage while all the big mosh dudes are like jacking you up, and we were cracking. We were cracking up.
As you should have been.
Oh my gosh, there's so many good stories.
That is so funny because I remember I had my first driver's license picture taken shortly after that trip. And I still had like the big red mark on my forehead. Yeah. From getting hit into that fence. Dude, that's crazy.
Then there was the young man in the trench coat.
Yes. I was just going to say that.
So I'm going to whoever's been listening to your podcast, you've told this story, they can see if you told it right. So this guy kept walking around. You've never talked about this guy?
No.
It was hilarious. Because we were standing next to some folks, and we thought we were little wimpy kids, right? And we're standing next to these guys, and they're like, "Hey, you got any blah blah blah?" I don't remember what drug they were asking for. And this guy, because this guy's wearing this huge black trench coat, and it's like 95 degrees.
It was so hot out there, dude. Yeah.
And this guy's like, I don't got acid or whatever. I got shrooms. And we always made fun of that for years afterwards. Like, I got shrooms.
Yeah. And then not too much later, do you remember seeing that guy flying up in the air?
Oh my gosh.
Remember that?
They were doing a mosh pit. It was still Bad Religion. They were doing a mosh pit, and we look, and this guy's getting thrown around like a rag doll with this trench coat. You can see him just throwing him in the air.
Yeah. And I remember thinking to myself, that guy wasn't even sweating. Like, he didn't have I remember specifically looking at him and thinking, I'm sweating because it's hot out here. This homie's wearing a trench coat.
It was insane.
Yeah, dude. I was like, dude, what kind of drugs are you on that makes you not sweat?
He probably has drugs for that. He's like, I'm just going to take a little bit of this blah, 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 and that'll keep my body temperature down.
Yeah. You don't want to use too much of the stash, though. You know what I mean?
They call him the chemist.
Yes. Yeah, dude, that's so funny.
That was and then those two guys we were sitting after, it was Neil Young playing when Eddie Vedder decided that he was too sick after like 5 songs, so he left. And then Neil Young was playing, and we were too young to appreciate Neil Young. So
do you kick yourself for that?
Yeah, seriously, I do. I'm like,
I do to this day too, because
I legend.
Yes, I came to appreciate him way later,
Yeah, same.
years after that, and I was like,
Same.
oh my gosh, this guy's a phenomenal songwriter.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but I
Yeah.
mean, we were just so ticked off that Pearl Jam wasn't gonna play
Yeah.
more. It's like, dude, I came to see Pearl Jam. I paid the money. I'm here. I drove 5 hours for this.
Yeah.
What's the deal? So
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, it's just so crazy, man.
And then those guys offered us a joint because we were their neighbors sitting near them. And
Oh,
then
I don't remember that.
we turned them down. You don't remember that?
No, I don't remember
Yeah.
that part.
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably remember more. You have a better memory than I do, man. That's
It's amazing.
yeah. Well, that was quite a trip, dude. That was, and I think we stayed down there for a couple days, right? We stayed with Kelly and her family.
I think so. Yeah. I kind of had a crush on her after that, but I never
I
saw
know.
her.
I remember you telling me that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. She's married, got a
Nice
couple of
girl.
kids now. So
Nice.
yeah, I think she lives in Texas, if I'm not mistaken.
Cool.
But anyway, yeah, dude, trip out on that, man. So I know that like we both said that we've gone through all the different genres and stuff, and I'm similar. Like I like everything now. There's really nothing that I don't like. I'm like you. Like within every genre, there's something I could say that is the greatest thing ever, and then something I can say that is absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, do you have a specific genre that you kind of just always fall back on as being like your favorite?
Yeah. So I'm a Sensi. I like acoustic alternative and, long walks
Okay.
in the and stuff. So
All right, good.
I like I like acoustic guitar and I like songwriters a lot,
Okay.
And so Ben Harper, I don't know if you're
Yeah.
familiar with Ben Harper,
Yep.
but
Yep.
I just can't get it. I mean, I've been listening to like the same 1,000 songs that that he wrote and performed different times.
And he's in another, what's the name of the band he was in? I know he does solo stuff, but wasn't he in?
I don't know of him ever being in a. I mean, he's played
Okay.
with different bands. Like because he's one of these guys that he would write all this music, and then he would find a band that he likes playing with, and then they would perform it like in one day in a studio, and then he'd release it because it was just amazing. He played with the Innocent Criminals a lot. That might be what you're thinking of, Ben Harper and the Innocent
Yeah,
Criminals.
I think that is why, because his name's in the title, but it was
Yeah.
and with the right. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but he's played with lots of different bands. But he's an incredible performer. He plays with Jack Johnson a lot.
Okay.
Jack Johnson's another one of my favorite.
Yeah,
artists.
he's cool.
Yeah.
He's have you ever heard of Paul Wright?
I don't think so.
Okay. He sounds a lot like Jack Johnson.
Okay.
He's like the Christian equivalent of Jack Johnson. So
Gotcha.
I remember when we were first really getting into the Christian music scene, and first time we saw Paul Wright play, that was before I really heard Jack Johnson. And then so it's kind of the reverse for us, and we're like, oh, Paul Wright's really cool. He's put on a great live show.
Kind of sounds like Paul Wright.
Yeah, that's kind of what we did, right? And then I think it was on the Curious George soundtrack.
Yeah.
Because Jack Johnson did the whole thing where
Upside
it's a
Down
cool
and all
song.
that.
Man, this guy sounds like Paul Wright. Who is this guy? Oh, it turns out he's got about a way bigger following than Paul Wright. Okay.
No,
So-
he's fantastic. He's
Yeah.
he's put out a lot of great music.
Yeah, for sure. So what's a couple of your favorites in that genre then? So you have
Oh gosh, I mean it's weird. It's weird. Like I really like Elliott Smith's stuff. I mean it's kind of somber music, but like sometimes I appreciate that, and it doesn't make me sad. Like I can kind of listen to it and absorb it.
yeah,
And,
you just laugh at their sorrow.
yeah, absolutely. I consider it a comedy. Yeah, that's kind of messed up.
You're like, hey,
But,
glad that's not me.
He was an incredible songwriter, right? Like didn't understand things enough to be happy, but he understood things enough to really
Right.
break some stuff down in a way that was very
He killed himself, right? Back in
yeah. I guess it's kind of a controversy because like he stabbed himself in the heart, and so a lot of people think that his girlfriend got away with murder.
that's a brutal way to. Guess what? The worst way to kill yourself you could think of.
That's why a lot of people think that his girlfriend got away with murder.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know. Like that's as much as I know on it. I haven't done any, open or cold case studies on it.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. But that was quite a while back, right? Was that like
Gosh, I mean,
early
he was-
2000s maybe?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I started listening to him. Gosh, I think I was like on my first deployment.
Okay.
2007, 2008 is when I started
Yeah.
listening to Elliott Smith. I think
Okay.
maybe a little bit before that, but
I remember one time sitting up in your bedroom at the Countrywood house, and you had got the BMG
Yeah.
right? You get like,
I was just talking to somebody about
yeah,
those.
get 100 CDs for a nickel, and then,
I never paid them.
yeah,
They went out of business, and I never had to pay them.
yeah, yeah. I wonder
Someday I'm
why they
gonna
went out
like
of
have
business.
somebody. I'm gonna get a summons someday. Like, hey,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I remember like you getting the ones I remember specifically, and they were bands I didn't really know of at the time until later, years after this. But it was like you got like the Best of the Eagles, you
yeah,
got like Bonnie
yeah,
Raitt, you got like
yeah.
some stuff that I'm like, dude, what are you listening to? Because back then, of
Yeah.
course, that was like still I was still in the
That's
rap
old person
business stuff.
music.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, this is like what my
Yeah,
parents would listen to. Like, what are you doing?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I still listen to the Eagles like
Oh
at
yeah,
least
dude.
once or twice a week.
Yeah, Eagles are
Yeah.
fantastic.
I'll tell you one really cool thing, music wise, right?
Mhm.
I just went and saw Green Day about
Oh, nice.
a month and a half ago, 2 months ago
Hmm.
in Cincinnati when they were doing their Great America tour or whatever.
Is that the
And
one where the Smashing Pumpkins and
yeah, yes,
Rancid played with them?
yep, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we went and saw them, and they were fantastic. We had a blast. I had
Yeah.
no idea Billy Joe was that much of a rock star. Like he
Oh
really
yeah.
is. He's truly a rock star. It was
Yeah.
fun, right?
Hmm.
But the cool thing is, like, why am I seeing Green Day? I'm not a Green Day fan. Like I like punk, but it was never. I
Yeah.
was never like you were with it.
Right.
My son though, my son started playing guitar about a year and a half ago, bass
Mm.
and guitar, and he plays like he had a
Nice.
music lesson today. Um,
Okay.
he is rediscovering all the music that I tried to show him back when he was little, and all he wanted to listen to
Ah,
was like YouTube video game music. And now
nice.
he's like really loving music, and I get to enjoy it with him all the time, and it's just been fun. Like
That's
I
awesome.
care and enjoy music more than I have in years because
Yes.
I'm sharing it with my son. It's really
Yeah.
cool.
That's probably about when that started happening for me too, is when Aiden started getting into music. That's when I really was able to start showing him stuff. Oh, check
Yeah,
this out, check this out. All these
yeah.
things that I used to listen to, and some of it he's like, "Oh, Dad, this is terrible." Other stuff he's like, "Oh man, this is really really cool."
Let me ask you this: Is
Yeah.
there anything that you had listened to a million times, but now that you're kind of older, wiser, you listen to it now and you're like, oh, like you were missing it like your whole life. You were missing
Like
like
missing the
the
point of
beauty
the
of the
song.
song. Yeah,
Oh, I'm
I've had
sure,
that happen
dude.
several times, and I think it's because I'm just simple.
Yeah. No, I'm sure. I mean, there's definitely that's probably true of every song in the world, really. I mean, because when you're younger, when I was younger, it was pretty much just for the sound.
Right?
It was like, oh, this sounds really cool, or but it's not till your brain kind of develops and you're like,
It's like
oh, that's what he's talking about.
the audio aesthetic or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah, right,
yeah,
right. I mean, like a lot of like the punk bands I would listen to, like it's all about like social issues and social justice and screw the government and all that kind of stuff.
but it's kind
But
of surface level stuff still.
yeah,
And then you
yeah.
get
But I
old, and
mean,
then you get older, and you start to go, oh, you hear more of the nuance in there. I think
right,
when you're older.
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
it's just been an interesting
Well,
phenomenon.
and it's funny for me. It's almost like a paradox because like I grew up and all that listening to a lot of these songs where I'm like, oh yeah, screw the government and blah blah. And then as I grew up and I kind of definitely started leaning more in a conservative political mindset.
Yeah,
Now I find myself at odds with a lot of the lyrics in the punk
yeah,
songs that I still listen to. Like, I mean, my
right.
my all time favorite band is a band called 15 that most people haven't even heard of, but they're very political, very very anti-cop, anti-war on drugs, anti like all this kind of stuff, and it's like, and I'm not anti a lot of that stuff. So, but I'll still crank the song up and sing my heart out in my car and just rock out, as if, But I remember when I was younger, I would listen to that and go, man, this guy gets it. He gets it, man. And now it's like, man, this guy's off. It's like, so it's kind of funny.
So I'll share like that happens for me all the time, right? I
Okay.
mean, I just said that one of my favorite artists is Jack Johnson.
Hmm.
I mean, he's like probably. I mean, some of his lyrics are the most kind of like liberal, lyrics I've heard, right?
Hmm.
But the way I look at it now, like it's kind of this sounds like some hippie stuff right now, but I'll tell you, like as I get older, I just love people, and I
Yeah.
like I think of now I don't think of it as like I'm at odds with it. I'm like, okay, that person really effectively shared like a part of the human experience that they're experiencing right now.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think of it like that, and if anything, I try to have empathy for where that person was and how they felt at the time that they wrote that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that
You
makes
know, like
sense.
that Sir Mix-a-Lot song. I like big butts. Like I try to empathize. Where was he, and how was he feeling about Badonkadonk when he wrote that song?
Yeah. I mean, that's true. I mean, really, what was going through his head? It's hard to tell. He's not really up and up front about it. He's very
Yeah.
poetic.
It's very nuanced.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yes. Very hard to it's hard to get into the meaning behind the Sir Mix-a-Lot songs, you know.
It's kind
I
of on
bet
the nose if I'm being real. Yeah.
yeah, I bet
On
that
the
guy
button.
like he probably hates that song. He's like, dude, I'm like all the songs I've written, this is like the only
Yeah.
thing anybody knows me for, you
Did
know.
anyone hear my posse's on Broadway, or did they just hear?
Right.
You know?
Well, see, the guys like us that grew up listening to that stuff, we did. We like when Baby Got Back came out, it was like we already knew who Sir Mix-a-Lot was. Like we were already bumping Posses on Broadway,
Yeah.
Buttermilk Biscuits,
Yeah. Buttermilk
you know?
biscuits.
Yeah, like all those songs. We thought that was great, man. I had
Yeah.
that Swass album on cassette tape. You know, I used to just
Yeah.
play that all the time. And then when that one came out, in fact, I remember when I bought that, we were in do you remember Record Outlet?
Yeah.
Right? That little indie like music store that was over there
Yeah.
by Food for Less.
God, my kids
And,
would love that place now.
oh my gosh, dude, that place was awesome. We don't really have stuff like, I mean, because
Yeah,
people
it's hard to
don't
find.
buy,
It's hard to find those.
they don't buy CDs anymore anyway.
Mm.
But I used to go in that place all the time. And I remember I was in there one time and I went in there to get something else. I don't remember what it was. It was something rap related. And they were playing that. They started playing that album in there, and it wasn't even "Baby Got Back." It was, I think, "One Time's Got No Case." I think was the name of the first song on that album, and he played it, and I was listening to it, and I think it was me and Brian Sowers that were in there, and I go, "Dude, this is awesome!" I didn't even recognize that it was Sir Mix-a-Lot because it was
Yeah.
so much more polished sounding than the albums that came out before that.
Oh, gotcha.
And I asked the guy working there, I was like, "Dude, who is this?" He goes, "Oh, this is Sir Mix-a-Lot's album. It just came out today." And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I bought it that day. I bought the CD
Nice.
that day. And then like in the next couple months is when they released that Baby Got Back as a single.
Mm.
And then that's when he just blew up. And it's like, oh my gosh, you know? So it's just funny.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I think that's kind of part of it. It's part of growing up, right? You grow up, I mean, back to what you were saying earlier, but you grow up and for most people, I think you grow up and you're not really the political activist that you were as a kid, right? You kind of mature. You kind of, for most people, I mean, I've met 95-year-old men that are still out there, you know, as punk rock as can be and just fighting the system and everything else. But I mean, it seems like for the most of us, we settle down, we get married, we have kids. And as we raise kids, we start to realize, well, you know what? The government's really not that bad, right? Like, I mean, they do provide some good things, you know?
So, I mean, obviously, it's been a really political time, and we
gosh.
we have a lot of conversations. We've always been like really open books with our kids, and try to always teach them how to think, not what to think, you know.
Bingo.
And so my daughter, you know, she gets pretty amped up, and I'd say she's probably definitely more left leaning. Although I still think compared to a lot of people, she's pretty moderate.
Right.
Pretty independent. But you know, we were talking about things, and you know, there was something my wife and I were frustrated about, like her perspective. And I was like, you know, I think what happens is when you're young, you haven't experienced that much. And this isn't to say that a young person's wrong if they disagree with me, but just for perspective, like when you're young, you haven't experienced that much. And so it makes sense that you would kind of rely on platitudes and you would be more idealistic, you know, you would be more about ideology versus, you know, practical application of, say, a policy. And as you get older and you experience more, you kind of see what works and what doesn't. So generally speaking, most people get more pragmatic, and more pragmatic, you know, you kind of get more conservative, like a lot of people do. Right. So unless you're kind of in like one of those pockets or echo chambers, I think that's kind of a normal thing. And I think it's good that we have a wide variety of different people, because I think when people get too pragmatic, that can kind of become its own evil that we've all seen, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You can go too far either direction, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah,
right.
Totally.
As the same with anything.
A lot of that just in our lives, you know?
Yeah. And it's, yeah, we're definitely going to talk about that. I mean, there's so much politically to talk about right now. I mean, we'll get to that in a little bit. That's going to be our next topic. Because
that's what I'm most nervous about. I don't normally talk about this stuff outside of like a very small group of people that I trust.
Yeah. But why can't we? Why can't we talk about that?
Well, I mean, no, we can't, right? That's why I'm here. So I'm here, Ryan. Okay. Don't have to pressure me.
Hmm.
No, but I think part of it for me is my role, like for at least the last 15 years of my career. So most of my career, I was in some kind of leadership position, and
Right.
it was always difficult for me to. I never wanted to alienate myself from anybody.
Sure.
I really did keep a lot of that stuff out of my work persona, and unfortunately, right, wrong, or indifferent, I worked most of the time. I worked a lot of hours, so
Right.
didn't leave a lot of time to hang out and talk to people about my personal political beliefs. So,
Sure. Sure.
really my family and my kids, and
I was going to say you and Felicia probably had lots of conversations about it, but
yeah, we've always talked about everything, but and with the kids too. But
Mhm.
outside of that, there's very few people that I share
Yeah,
that stuff with, just because
sure. Sure.
there's other things to talk about.
There's lots of other things to talk about, like music. So let's get back to that.
All right, let's do it.
Um, okay. So you said like this, the kind of the acoustic singer songwriter is kind of your favorite genre. So we kind of covered that already.
Bonnie Raitt, the
Yeah.
Eagles.
Bonnie Raitt, the Eagles, Milli Vanilli. I mean,
Yeah, Milli Vanilli, the real original,
yeah, that's right.
creators.
Awesome stuff, dude. How about like a band or an artist that has literally changed something about you, like changed you in some way? Do you have anything like that, or to you is it just kind of, oh, this music is something I listen to, it's not that important that it's going to literally change my outlook on life or anything like that?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of it has had an impact on me. I think it'd be difficult for me to point out one that's had like the impact on me.
Mm-hmm.
But I could say like one thing about Ben Harper that I love is like, a million poets, a million songwriters have written about love and about loss and about the trials and tribulations we go through in life. But what I really love about his songwriting, he actually writes it from the perspective of somebody who's lived, who's experienced. And so you don't usually get that a lot in like pop music, right? Because you're trying to reach out to a younger audience that listens to more music,
Right.
And so he really writes, like when he writes about love, he writes about like the kind of love that you and I probably understand similarly. It's not all what we thought it was going to be when we were, 15, 16, and we dreamed of just like holding hands into the sunset and we'll always agree and we'll never fight and everything will just be perfect.
Yeah. Nonstop stomach butterflies.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And then you live and you find out that, love was really probably more beautiful than you ever thought it would be, but different than you thought it would be.
Right. For sure. For sure.
It's intertwined with pain and all those other things.
Is that really experiential for him? Like, is he writing about personal stuff, or is he one of those people that can kind of write as if he was these people?
No, I think you can. I think you can kind of tell the difference usually, and I think that he's a lot of times he's drawing on like real stuff that he's pulling out. And he's good at doing it. Okay. He writes very honest music, so I appreciate that, and that's been good for me because it's kind of like my I'd say like my last 4 or 5 years I've been really trying to be honest with myself. I'm sure we'll get to some of that as we keep talking. But yeah, for sure.
So I'm definitely gonna have to look into some more Ben Harper here, because I've maybe heard a few songs and I probably couldn't even tell you what they were. So I'll have to check some of that out. Yeah. That's one of the things I love about this show too, is I get a lot of recommendations of music that I can check out, and
that's cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right. So the last thing we do in music is I usually like to get a top 5 favorite, and then a top 5. I mean, if you can, the number itself, the number 5 is not magical. Yeah. Just like 5 favorites of all time. And then also like, maybe you don't have to do 5 of these, but like 5 or a certain number of bands or artists that you just can't stand. Like, I like to do that too. Like, well, what's a band that you're like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. I can't believe people like that. But before we do that, I just had another memory of being at your parents' house on the country. I feel like we were alone a lot there. Like your parents were working all the time or something.
Yeah, like that was it's not necessarily in a good way.
No, but that was like that was like the man, dude. I have a video somewhere of us hanging out in your backyard. And I should probably find it and light it on fire. before somebody
If
finds
it's
it.
one of those. Yeah.
Yeah, I probably.
Let's not talk about that.
Yeah.
We can't talk about that.
But I do want to go through it eventually someday and kind of just select some certain, spots in there and send them to the people that were kind of there. Because it was funny. But anyway, this particular memory I have is of the song Freedom by Rage Against the Machine. And we used to blast that because your parents had a really good sound system. I don't know if
they got that stereo. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was back in the days when like people would have like a big, like almost like an entertainment center and there was nothing in it but a stereo.
Yeah.
Right. So the
subwoofer
really
was like the size, the height of like the size of a big TV now.
Yeah, dude. And it used to just blast that thing. So we used to put on Rage's first album and just blast that thing in there. Yeah. And you used to sing the screamy part at the end. Do you remember this?
I can't do it at all anymore.
I know you can't do it. I don't expect you to do it, but I just cracked me up because I was like,
oh yeah, it's funny when I think about how good I mean I was never like a great singer, but I used to be able. I had some range, and I used to be able to sing like And now I can't sing at all. It's terrible. We do karaoke with Chase and Maurice, my son-in-law.
Oh, nice.
And I suck so bad.
For me, it depends on the song. There's certain songs I can do pretty well at, depending on the band. Do a decent job. At least I think I'm doing a decent job. I don't know, but we'll see. But getting in front of people is always a bit scary. So let's do five. Let's do five favorites first. And you can do some of the ones you already said. You already mentioned Ben Harper and Jack Johnson.
We talked about some of them. Bad Religion, Jack Johnson, Ben Harper, the Eagles, the Beatles. I mean, it's so hard for me to pick five, man. I just love it. Really, it would depend on what day you talk to me. George Strait, Travis Tritt, I mean, Alan Jackson. There's just so many. And I would hate to try to actually rank them because I just love them. I love them all so much, right?
Yeah, that's really hard.
Johnny Cash. I mean, there's just so much great music out there, man. And it's fun when you rediscover it because you're in a certain mood and you just kind of go on that, like you go down that rabbit hole. It's the best thing in the world.
Right.
Or when you find a new artist that's always been there. And I remember when I first found Elliott Smith and I was like, I think they made fun of it on Family Guy. Like, how could this beautiful talent die so young? And that was me. I was like, I can't believe this. He's got me crying,
No, and I'm with you, especially today, because that's the best for me. Like now as I'm 46 and I have my favorites. I go back to the 90s and I listen to that great music that came out in the 90s. I love it and all that. But it's very, very rare for me to come across something new that I just fall in love with. And it doesn't happen. It happens maybe every 4 to 5 years or so. I'll hear something. It's like, I'll hear songs here and there. Oh, that's a good song. That's a good song. But every 4 to 5 years, there'll be a band or an artist that I just completely go all in with. Like I just have to get everything that they've released and I just listen to it for months and months on end. And then it still stays with me then, so that's always fun to find that, because it doesn't happen as much, it's kind of out there in the boonies.
Right.
But yeah, so I mean, probably most recently, what would be the most recent for me that happened with? Maybe like Alec Benjamin. I don't know if you know Alec Benjamin. He's a singer-songwriter, so you might dig it. Very poetic lyrics and very nostalgic lyrics. But he's got a very high pitched voice. So I don't know if that's your thing or not, but for writing style is pretty good. But and before that was probably 21 Pilots. Like I really love 21 Pilots.
Yeah, that's funny. I actually took Mackenzie to 21 Pilots when she was like 16.
You saw a show?
Yeah, we went and saw them in New Orleans.
Okay, nice. What year was that?
That must have been like probably 2018.
Okay, so that was like Trench. No, yeah, Trench. That was the Trench album.
That was like the when they really hit big.
Yeah, that would have been in Blurry Face in 2015 is when Blurry Face came out.
Yeah, it was Blurry. They were playing mostly Blurry Face.
Okay. Yeah, that's when they really. Yeah, we saw them on that tour. I've seen them 3 times because they're the greatest show I've ever seen. It
really was a
My
blast.
gosh, dude, so amazing. Those guys really put on a show.
Yeah. That drummer, man. Have you ever seen anybody drum with that much energy?
No.
I was like, why am I not playing drums right now? Like, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah, he's awesome. And I love how there's just two of them. I think that's so cool.
Oh yeah, it's
and
great.
they just tour with just two of them, and they, and it's just,
And they
so
rock.
funny.
They rock
Big time. Yeah, big time. So, all right. So I can do this part one of two ways of some of those favorites. Are you good with song titles? Are you able to give me 2 or 3 favorite songs off of all those off the fly?
Yeah, sure. And I'll definitely for the Ben Harper.
Okay.
If you're gonna check him out, look up the Lifeline album.
Lifeline album. The whole
Lifeline.
album's good. Okay.
Yeah, check out that album. That's the one that really caught me. And then since then, I've just listened to all billion of his songs that he's written.
Okay.
But I'd say In the Colors by Ben Harper. That's one that's like when I talk about like that's real love, buddy. Like that's that one kind of gets me when I think about like the journey. Like the journey that a relationship takes when you go through the ups and the downs and. You're still together and you're stronger and all that. So that one I really love. Shoot. Oh, I'm so bad with trying to pick songs, but Desperado by the Eagles is like.
Oh yeah. That's a classic. Yeah. Eagles.
Gosh, I'm trying to think of some of the songs that like get me. Oh, this is going to sound funny, but like Bryan Adams.
Oh yeah.
Like when you love a woman like that.
Oh
song,
yeah.
That song gets me, man.
Was that from the Don Juan movie, right? Wasn't that?
Yeah.
So funny. Who was in that movie? Was that Johnny Depp?
I think it was Johnny Depp. Yeah.
Okay. And I feel like Marlon Brando in that too? I feel like Marlon Brando
I never
was
actually saw that movie. I'm going to be honest with you.
Okay. Yeah, well, most people probably haven't. They just know that song because
I just remember the video and Johnny Depp and on the beach in a pirate hat or whatever.
Right. And that was the inspiration for Jack Sparrow later on. See, there it was.
Was it?
I don't know. I'm just making it up.
That's what we're gonna stick with.
Yeah, he wore the pirate hat and he's like, hey, I bet I could play a pirate.
Yeah.
He's
such a weirdo.
Oh man, dude, big time. Big time weirdo. Unlike all the other people in Hollywood who are totally.
Yeah, I mean they're so straight laced, and then there's Johnny Depp.
That's what I thought was funny about the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial. Is like if you're in the courtroom with Johnny Depp and he looks 100 times more sane than you are, things are not going well for your side of things. There,
that is an astute observation. All
right. So what else did you say? You said Bad Religion. You got some favorite Bad Religion songs?
Oh, yeah. Sorrow is my favorite song.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
That is absolutely my favorite song.
Okay. Well, that's hands down. You can actually literally pick a favorite Bad Religion song.
That is my favorite Bad Religion song. Sorrow. I love it.
I don't think I could do that.
Yeah.
There's way too many for me.
Yeah, shoot. I'm just trying to think. Gosh. It's just hard, man. So my son loves to put me on the spot. I think he's doing it just to troll me. He loves to put me on the spot constantly and ask me for my favorite of something.
Yeah.
And I'm such a non-committal person. I'm like, oh, I really can't, son. Like there's some risk. Like I'm going to get called out later on.
Yeah.
And be like, you liar.
Yeah.
I just can't, man, because I don't want to be lazy with it. I'm like honoring something by telling it, like the Eagles are listening and like Don Henley's over here.
Oh,
like,
yes.
Oh, really? Yeah. Desperado. Yeah.
Well, be careful because Don Henley's he's a big fan of this podcast. So he listens to all the episodes. Yeah. He's he's
your biggest fan.
Yeah.
Is he still alive?
He is. Yeah.
Hey, good job, Don.
Glenn Frey died. The other singer, right? Glenn Frey? I
think so. Yeah. That was the other lead singer.
Yeah. Which I always preferred Henley. Personally, like vocally, I like him better, but
I mean, he's iconic, right? Don Henley had that iconic voice.
Yeah,
it's kind of like with Fleetwood Mac, another band that I absolutely still listen to all the time, right?
Yes,
fantastic. The White Witch, man, her voice was so distinctive. So the songs that you remember first when you think of Fleetwood Mac are her, but there was 2 other lead singers in that band.
Yes.
And they were both amazing too, and
they had some #1 hits with their songs that they sang lead on, but that's not the ones we remember.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah. Oh my gosh. All right. It's Bad Religion, Eagles, Jack Johnson.
Gosh. So he didn't write this, but he did him and Ben Harper actually did a cover of High Tide, Low Tide from Bob Marley. If you haven't heard that, then that one kind of, you'll feel that one.
I don't even know if I've heard Bob Marley's original version of that song.
Oh, that's great. It's great.
Huh.
It's so raw. Man, you got to check it out.
Okay, I've heard
I
most
don't
of
even
Bob
know if
Marley's stuff.
I don't
but that
even know
one,
if he wrote it, but it's a beautiful
okay.
song.
Okay. High tide, low tide.
High tide, low tide. I think it's
Okay.
called.
All right.
Really great song about. Yeah, anyway, you'll check it out.
Yeah.
Golly, and that was another one I should have said is Bob Marley. I still listen to Bob Marley all the time.
All right. We'll throw out 2 or 3 favorite songs from Bob Marley then.
All right. I mean, shoot, one love.
One Love. Yeah, it's a good one.
Three Little Birds.
Yeah, that's my favorite Bob Marley song.
Golly, there's just so many good ones. Zimbabwe. Gosh, Africa Unite. I just love it.
I love that one.
He was an incredible.
Yeah.
He was just an incredible. Like when we talk about like writing, like from like a raw, like somebody writing from their soul, he's a perfect example.
Yeah.
You know, he's a perfect example. He was always writing from his soul. It was very honest.
Yeah, and later on got very, very political. You know, in his lyrics, you know, like Africa Unite and all those songs on those later albums on like Survival.
Yeah.
I think the album is called Survival. That's right.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, where he started to get real political on that. Well, you mentioned some country guys too: George Strait, Travis Tritt, Alan Jackson.
George Strait. Chill of an Early Fall is probably my favorite George Strait song. I probably like that one the most, but I love all of it. Amarillo by Morning, like all the Chair, like all of his hits from his like that 50 greatest hits album I bought when we still bought DVD or CDs back in the day.
Right.
Yeah, he had like 2 volumes of the dude's had so many #1 hits. Yeah. And I could just I used to listen to that thing all the time and you know, drink whiskey back in the day when I used to drink. But,
well, he's been around since what, the 80s?
Oh, gosh. 70s, yeah.
70s? Oh my gosh.
I think so. Late 70s, I think, is when he was new, possibly. But yeah, I mean, I remember hearing him when I was a kid and I couldn't stand it. And then later on, I might listen to him. I mean, just as much as I listen to anybody else, honestly.
Right. So what do you think changed? Like, what do you think it was like your brain that changed? Like you hear something, you're like, I can't stand that. And then you change to, oh, I love that.
I think like you have these like filters on as a person, like just like we're just so overwhelmed constantly with input, with information and data. Like we put these filters on to try to make sense of information. And those filters can be like a lot of times they're biased. And like, I'm just going to filter this out with this bias. And I'm not really thinking about it or listening to it, you know, because this isn't what I'm into right now. Right. And then later on, you get to a different point in your life where you're like, you take the filter off for whatever reason, like you're having a more open mind. And then when you hear it, I don't know. It means, you know, you're actually hearing it. You're listening.
Right. So it's like a maturity that takes place.
I think, I think it's a maturity. And I think, I mean, there was a lot of ways I was still very immature when I started loving George Strait. And there was probably other music that I wasn't appreciating, but
like Milli Vanilli.
Like Milli Vanilli. Yeah. Oh, shoot. I forgot to tell you. Yeah. Milli Vanilli. Good. You know, it's true. Whatever.
That's right, man.
That's it.
See?
Poor guys.
I know. I feel bad. For him. It's good stuff in the dad when it came out, though.
Yeah. So was the Jake Paul Tyson fight. No, I'm just kidding.
Did you watch it?
That was the Milli Vanilli of boxing matches.
Oh my gosh, I didn't see any of it. So I was actually out delivering pizzas last night. So all I saw was like when I would get to someone's door, and we were slammed, obviously, because of all the people watching the fight. And every time I get to someone's door with a pizza, they'd open up and I'd see the fight on in the background. I'd see like little snippets here and there, but not very much. I think I saw more of the women's fight before that than anything else.
That was a good fight. What's funny is I don't like boxing at all.
I don't either.
I started thinking of boxing more like WWE or whatever. Right. A long time ago, and I had no interest. But Felicia was adamant. We need to watch that fight, Chet. And then after, like, she was mad at me because we're watching. I'm like, I told you it was rigged. I told you. Because I just had making sure she knew that I knew. Right. Because that was important to me last night.
Which isn't a good strategy because you do have to live with this person. So
yeah, and she was pissed at me. She was like, you just had to tell me. You just had to keep telling me.
So you think we would know better by now than antagonizing our wives, but
we can talk about maturity, but we never attain it. But no, she was the one that really wanted to watch it. So I stayed up and till
Okay.
freaking 1 a.m.
Oh, that's right. Because are you guys 3 hours ahead?
3 hours ahead. Yeah.
So it's like, what time is it right now? Like 5:30?
Yeah.
Oh, dang, dude.
Yep. Yep.
Wow. I'm going to keep you through dinner then. That's going to be,
That's okay.
I hope you brought some snacks in your room there or something.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And then I after I got off work last night, I was like 9:30 here and I ended up stopping by a friend's house on the way home and the fight had just ended. And I remember they were saying, and they don't really watch boxing, but just like everybody, it's like, we don't watch boxing, but we're going to watch this, because I think the way he described it was it's got this cocky YouTuber who's wanting to fight, the greatest fighter of all time or whatever, and it's kind of this thing. But they were saying it wasn't even enjoyable. It's like it was boring. It wasn't even like
it was bad.
Yeah. And they said it was sad. What they say, Tyson landed like 15 punches total in the whole fight or something.
It was dumb. The whole thing was dumb. Like it was very clear. Like you want $20 million, you got to let this thing keep going into the rounds. And so he just sat there.
Yeah.
And he just sat there. And like, I know enough about boxing to know, like, you don't go wildly swing at Mike Tyson if he's even 80 and he's in a wheelchair. He will counter you.
Yes.
He's a boxer. His hands move on their own, right? Like he was going in, like he clearly had the confidence to just swing and put his face right in front of Mike Tyson, and Mike Tyson didn't even swing. It was dumb.
Yeah, and I kind of thought that in before. All these months and months they've been talking about it. It's like it's a money grab. It's totally a money grab, and I get it. But that's the way it used to be back, even when Tyson was in his prime. Yeah. These guys that would fight him, they knew. Remember some of those fights? Like it would be over in like 10 seconds. I remember the one that he got hit like twice, fell down or whatever, and the fight was over. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, people paid all this money to see this fight. But the guy that fought Tyson in that fight's thinking, yeah, I just got the money. That's all. Yeah. That's all. Hey, I got my $20 million or whatever it was.
My brain damage too. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's the question. Would you take a punch from Mike Tyson for $20 million? Yeah. No, not worth it. Not worth your brain cells.
It's not worth it. Not worth it. I struggle enough like with my brain now. Yeah. I don't need brain damage on top of what I've already done to it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. My memory is definitely not what it used to be either. Do you remember the song "I Think I Can Beat Mike Tyson" by DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince?
Totally.
Stinking funny, dude. That's what I kept thinking about when I heard about the Jake Paul thing. Yeah. It's just so funny. But, knowing nothing about Jake Paul going in, I was just like, this guy's not even a boxer. He's this or that. But, anyway. All right. So last thing in music, just kind of throw at me some artist bands you don't like.
Gosh. Some of the stuff that we used to listen to, right? Like Vanilla Ice, Ice and Milli Vanilli. Like, you can't hear that and not just anybody that was just clearly manufactured, right? Like the boy band stuff, New
Kids on the Block.
Yeah, there's this little small element of nostalgia where I'm like and I'm ready to like do a little dance, and then I'm like, what, F that that music sucks, and it actually pisses me off because I feel ashamed for liking it. I feel ashamed for at one point liking that music. Mm-hmm. That's the music that I don't like now.
But we never admitted to liking it back in the day anyway. Or at least not New Kids on the Block. No. Maybe Vanilla Ice.
I was like, have you seen It, the new version of It?
I saw the first part, but not the second.
The first part, right?
Okay, yeah.
Movie. And he's got like the poster of like New Kids on the Block.
Yeah.
I was like that kid.
Yeah, you're like, that was me.
I was like a closet New Kids on the Block fan.
Yeah.
But,
I didn't.
And all that stuff. My girlfriend in high school, Laura, she liked NSYNC, and I'd listen to it with her and pretend to like it. I just anything that made me feel like a fraud of a human. That's the stuff that pisses me off.
But see, there's still some NSYNC songs that I can listen to and like. Yeah. Like I think on their last album, like the Celebrity album with like Dirty Pop and a slow song Gone. They had a slow song called Gone that was really good on there.
I'm proud to say I don't know what you're talking about right now. You should feel ashamed.
I do. I feel very ashamed. Yeah. I have very little that I'm shameful about these days in my life. It's like, nope. I am who I am. Deal with me.
Yeah, pretty much.
You kind
Right?
of get to that point.
That's part of getting older.
Yeah, exactly. I spent most of my life trying to fit the cool guy mold, and then you get to
Somebody's, yeah,
where you're like,
somebody's mold, right?
yeah, and then you're like, yeah, whatever's, I
Yeah.
did. And people say, oh, I'm doing this and that, and it's like, I told a guy the other day, I said, why are you working out, man? You're married. You already got the woman. I mean, who are you trying to impress, dude? Like,
Yeah.
come on. He's like, oh, I can't eat pizza today. Dude, you're like 55 years old. You're married. Your kids are all out of the house. Eat some pizza, dude. Come on. This is the time.
Right.
Now's the time. You're just waiting to die at this point. You might as well enjoy yourself. Hmm. Oh, man. So.
That's interesting, man, that you said that waiting to die, because that's something I was thinking about the other day.
Oh, yeah?
My daughter, she's a barista.
Okay.
So she goes to school full, like full time, and then she works part time, but she works a lot of hours.
Which daughter?
Mackenzie, the one that still lives with me. Yeah.
Okay.
So she's a barista in this like little hippie town nearby, and she deals with a lot of old people. And she's getting like to where she hates old people because they're so freaking rude to her. And like I was like really kind of like thinking about it. I'm like, what happens, right? And I was thinking like, I think there's a lot of things that happen. I think they get I think they stop caring about what people think. So that's no longer like behaving is no longer like enough to motivate them to behave, right? It's like,
Right.
oh, I need to appear to be friendly or whatever. So they stop that. They get grumpy because they probably are in some kind of pain or frustrated.
Yes.
They're tired of people not taking them seriously because they're kind of out of that like that zone where people listen to you. And now you're just like, we just tolerate you because you're older.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is they're just kind of like waiting to die. Like they're just trying to prolong their life as long as much. And that is the main thing they think about.
Right.
And that would get anybody pissed off. I mean,
and you got to figure like when they come to I assume barista's coffee shop, right?
Yeah.
So they come to this coffee shop. That might be the highlight of their whole day.
Yeah.
Right. That might be the one time of the day that they get out of the house. They get to get their favorite drink, whatever that is, and they get to enjoy the scenery or whatever they're doing,
Right.
So I guess that's something maybe that your daughter can look at and go, yeah, these old people are terrible. But I mean, for all she knows, she might be the last person they talk to before they die that night or something,
I'm going to remind her of that.
Yeah. Just let her know. Hey, just
they might literally
so
die right after they get this coffee.
Yes. Well, yeah. You'd hope not because
take their abuse and hand them the coffee with a smile.
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, that's dealing with the public anyway, because Bethany was a server for many years at a steakhouse, and she had the mix, right? She had certain regulars that she just loved them. She would sit down with them and talk to them for a long time when they would come in. And then there was other regulars who was like, oh my gosh, she'd come home and tell me, oh, so-and-so came in tonight and it was terrible. And this guy's such a jerk and he's this. And I was like, and of course, being me, I was like, well, do you want me to go down there? And no, babe, no, just, it's like, okay, well, good. Cause I didn't really want to. I was just trying to sound tough.
I would have written him a strongly worded email.
That's right. I would have looked at him. I would have gave him the side eye. Hey, man, that's my wife you're talking to right there. Yeah, it's just funny, dude. Well, you got kind of like almost like a Bill Burr thing going on. Like, has anybody told you look kind of like Bill Burr?
Yeah, and it's funny because he actually the town my daughter works in is Dave Chappelle's town. It's called
really?
Yellow Springs, Ohio. And Bill Burr and him are friends, so he comes into town pretty frequently. So
does he ever go to the coffee shop?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah. So when he does, he's always like, "Dad, I swear you look like a thicker Bill Burr." Like, thanks, honey.
Good. I'm glad it's not just me. It's too funny, man.
And when I get going, like I'm not cursing because we're on a podcast and it's a family friendly thing.
Yes.
But,
yes.
I kind of sound like him too.
Do you? I think he's funny. I mean, I think he's
I think he's
I like comedians that are not only funny, but they're making a point.
Yeah.
And somebody actually brought up to me on here one time, and I've been using it as an example ever since, is his whole cake thing about the abortion. Did you ever see that whole clip?
I don't think so, huh?
Where he's talking about people say, oh, it's not a, basically it's not a life. It's not a life. It's just a clump of cells or whatever, right? They have the whole argument. And he tells a story about how, like, well, what if, like, I'm over there and I bake this cake, right? I put all the ingredients in, I stir it up, I make the batter, I put it in the cake pan and I put it in the oven, and then you come in like 5 minutes later and you open up the oven you take the cake out and you throw it all over. You just threw it on the floor and it split everywhere, and the cake batter went all over the place. And you got all upset. And you're like, dude, or something. Why'd you do that? And they said, well, what's not a cake? It's not a cake yet. And he's like, it would have been if you would have left it alone. It's kind of the whole thing. So he's like making a political point, but still being funny at the same time. And those are the kind of comedians that like Dave Chappelle is the same way.
Yeah.
I know he gets into hot water with some of the stuff he talks about.
Oh, dude, I've always been a huge Chappelle fan. Yeah. So it's ironic. Yeah. Like I keep joking, like I'm going to be friends with him. And he doesn't know it yet, but we're going to be boys.
Well, you're already right there, man. You just got to find out where he lives and go knock on his door.
He's going to see me and he's going to be like, hey.
Yeah.
So my son, even though we've talked to him about this, my son actually asked him for because my son was a barista in the next door coffee shop to my.
They're dueling. Dueling baristas.
At Chili's now because that place sucked. But he was working there and he was working at Chappelle's favorite coffee shop. Mackenzie was working at Chappelle's wife's and son's favorite coffee shop.
Oh, funny.
And so Chappelle went into my son's coffee shop and he was just like, hey, could I get a selfie? And he's like, I don't do that, man. Sorry. And he still did. and like he told us about it. We're like, Logan, we told you he doesn't like doing that when he's off. He wants to feel like a normal person.
Well, he had to try. I mean, he had to try.
I love my son because he's just like, whatever. I love it. Like, dude,
he didn't let it ruin his life too much.
No, he got over it immediately.
Yeah. But there's some people that just wouldn't. They just, for the rest of their life, they'd be talking about 50 years from now. This one time I asked for a selfie with Dave Chet. He said no. What a jerk. What a big jerk.
No, Logan, he not only did he understand like where he was coming from, but he also was like, oh, well, hopefully he doesn't. And I was like, I'm sure he didn't take it any kind of way, man. Logan's
like, his loss. He could have been in a selfie with me. I mean, right. And he blew it,
Yeah, he blew it.
Oh my gosh. Too funny. But all right, well, let's jump into your favorite topic here, politics. Yeah. I know you're really excited and eager to talk about politics. I usually go, there's a few different ways we can go with politics. I mean, obviously there's just a lot happening politically. We just had one of the most important, maybe is the right word, elections. I mean, depending on how people feel about it, definitely I think more people were tuned in to this election than have been in the past. I mean, anytime I think Trump is involved, there's a lot of eyes on the whole situation. So there's kind of that aspect, and then we can also just talk about issues in the world that you see as problems and things that need to be fixed. And I mean, either our world or our country, or anything. And again, like I said, you could talk about whatever you want. Like if you just want to opt out of a topic and you're like, nah, I'd rather not talk about that, just tell me and that's not a problem.
Gotcha.
But I mean, if we can start with just politically in our country, we just had that election, Trump and Harris. I don't know, going into that, I was kind of like, based on the polls, I really had no idea where that was, the outcome of that was going to be, because it seemed very dead heat, dead tide. And I watched that thing like a sporting event, and I don't really watch sports, but watching that, I mean, I started about 2 p.m. that day and I watched all the way to like 11 o'clock that night. I was just like glued to it and just watching, like, as it would show each state and be like, all right, well, Kamala's up, 55-35. And then an hour later, they'd be like 50-50. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then an hour later, Trump's up like 10%. And I'm like, dude, this is like, you just really have no idea which way it's going to go. And then as I start calling all the states, you're watching, okay, well, this is red, this went blue, and this one we're not sure of. It's still very purple, or it's just going to go either way. But all that aside, some of the things that happened in this election, as far as like, well, just as an example, like New York City giving like 35% of the vote to Trump.
Yeah.
That's unheard of, dude. Right. Like New York City does not vote for Republicans ever. Right. Like and especially Trump. Like Trump is not exactly the most loved man in America.
They're bright blue, and Trump is against a lot of the things that the bright blue,
Correct. Yeah. So, I mean, some crazy things happening that we've never really seen before. And of course, the one side is calling racism, sexism, that's why Kamala didn't win, blah, blah, blah. But then you look at the percentage of the black vote that Trump got and the Hispanic vote that Trump got and the percentage of female vote. I mean, Kamala got more of the female vote, of course, but that doesn't mean no women voted for Trump, because lots of women voted for Trump. So,
Yeah.
so anyway, so I know I just threw a lot of information out there, but kind of maybe share your thoughts with me on some of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll be pretty honest about it. Like it was another frustrating election for me. I'm like, man, we finally get a non-politician in here, and it's someone that just behaves the way he does, right? Because I get
Right.
frustrated with some of Trump's antics,
Oh, of course. Yeah.
And the reason, and so Felicia and I, we kind of quibble over this, but like a lot of the policy stuff that he did when he was in office, she really likes, and a lot of it I actually like too, and I think there's some really good impacts. And the fact that just having someone that isn't already in the big oil or big pharma or whomever, like big something's pocket, and that can actually act somewhat independently, I think is a huge benefit. I get frustrated because I think that, and I think a lot of people would agree with this, that being the president of a country is not just like what were the impacts of your policy decisions. You're also the leader of a nation, right?
Sure.
And the way you behave sets a tone that trickles into a lot of other things besides just the outcome of your policy decisions. Right. And in that respect, I think Trump failed a lot in his first election, or he would have been reelected, because practically speaking, a lot of things went really well. And so that's really frustrating for me. So I was kind of frustrated already, like, oh man, like this again. But I mean, it part of me was surprised that, like, for all those moderates that were like, okay, we've had enough of Trump, that they moved over in that sweeping of a fashion. But part of me wasn't surprised either, because it was just really clear that we were struggling in ways that typically swing elections.
Right. And I think what you're saying is really what it came down to for most, at least most people I've talked to, is you kind of have the two camps. You have the Trump's behavior camp and the Trump's policy camp. Right. And it doesn't mean that if somebody falls in one of those two categories, it means they don't care about the other side. It just means they care more about one of those two things. Right. Like I talked to a number of people that would say, like, well, I could never vote for Trump because he cheated on his wife, because he slept with a porn star, because he made a comment about Mexico or whatever the case. I mean, there was any number of list of things that he said either in his first term or even 20 years ago in the past, whatever, how far they're going to dig it all up, and then you talk to a lot of people more on the conservative side that are like, yeah, we don't like that stuff either. We're not sitting here going, yeah, we're glad Trump had sex with a porn star and cheated on his wife. We think that's awesome. That's fantastic. So good. Such a good quality to have in a person. But that side's going, yeah, but that doesn't matter to me as much because that doesn't affect my daily life. And that's kind of where I'm coming from personally, is that I'm like, again, I don't like Trump. I don't think he's a good person. But at the end of the day, I'm like, when I'm living my life with my family in my town, which one of those two candidates is going to make that easier for me? Yeah.
And I was very, very much like, that's exactly where I landed as well. And I guess when I say I was frustrated, my frustration is like, gosh, this is the leader of our country. Our process is this broken that we have to choose. Like, we can't have both. Like, you're telling, like, I couldn't be the manager of frickin' McDonald's if I treated people the way some of these folks treat each other, and that's when I say behavior, I'm really not even just talking about the indiscretion type stuff from, I'm talking about the way people treat each other, like the way he treats other people, which I think is, to me, can be actually kind of dangerous when it comes to, diplomacy. Like, you can't always just carry a bigger stick and just like, and here's the thing, like, he's actually been very crafty and very successful with a lot of his, diplomatic efforts. So it's not that I think he just walks around swinging a big stick and that's how he wins everything. But, you shouldn't always be calling people stupid. You shouldn't be calling people idiots. You shouldn't be dealing with dissent in that fashion. It just, it sets the tone. And that's the part that bothers me when I say behavior. It's
even if it's true. Even if somebody is stupid, even if somebody is an idiot, there's a tactful way to go. I mean, and I'm with you there. I don't think the president of the country should be resorting to, elementary school name calling.
Yeah, I mean,
you know?
I just think about like, what if a teacher did that at a small school? You'd be
Oh,
like,
the
they.
parents, yeah, the
I mean, this
parents
is
will
the
be up in
leader of our
arms.
country, and we can't. It's frustrating to me that we can't expect more. We have to choose. Well, I care about the policy. Like, why do I have to choose? Why can't I have both? Right.
Right.
And so maybe, I guess my frustration is we finally get a non-politician to break the mold with this, which I think is a very important thing. And
Hmm.
I just wish once he got into office, I was a little
Yeah.
disappointed with some of that stuff. But
So,
here we are.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So let me ask you then. So a lot of that kind of critique of his behavior, does that stem mostly from the first term, or do you see a lot of that in with this current campaign that he ran and into the current presidency that's going to take place in January?
Well, we'll see, right? Like he definitely softened it up. The one he's definitely not. He's got some advisors that are trying to keep him out of that water very
Yeah,
clearly. But
yeah,
he
for
still
sure.
can't help it sometimes, right? The guy's got a big ego, and if you
Yeah,
threaten it, he gets ugly.
and they know that, right? You saw the debate
Yeah.
between him and Harris,
Well,
right?
that's what was funny. The whole
Yeah,
like, he really got owned in that debate because
yeah,
she was like pushing every little pressure point, and
yeah.
he was falling for all of it. It was the
Well, and they
weirdest.
knew that, and they told her all you got to do is mention his crowd size at his rallies. That's all you got to
Yeah,
do, and he's going to get all prideful, and and that's exactly. He took the bait.
yeah, he sure
Yeah,
did. But
yeah,
so we'll see. Like we'll see. I mean, uh, how that goes. Like I said, I was kind of disappointed with the first term that I thought
yeah.
once he got in there, he was going to change. And then, one reporter asked a question that he doesn't like, and he's like, "You're an idiot," moving on. And
Right.
like, there's always people that love that, right? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
right, because they're still thinking of things in us versus them.
Right.
But I think for a lot of America, we're not thinking us versus them. It's just us. And we
Yeah.
need to, it's not about holding hands and all agreeing on everything. But at a certain point, we got to stop calling each other names, and we need to be
Yeah.
able to work.
Yeah. There has to be a level of respect that's
Yeah,
given even to those that disagree with you or fall on a different side of the fence.
absolutely.
That's what it all comes down to. Um,
One thing, I'll just say this real quick.
yeah.
Because and I had this discussion, and I did tell her, I said, one thing I really hope is that now, he does, I think, have a delicate ego for whatever reasons
Mhm.
in his life he does, right?
Right.
And I think that I'm hoping now that this election, he won it just so like the way he won it, it was just such a
Yeah.
wipeout.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that he just feels a little bit more secure in the role, and that
Mhm.
he just stays a little bit more focused on what he needs to do, and he can find that level of composure
Right.
that could maybe provide a better model for behavior on how we
Sure.
need to treat people that disagree with us.
Yeah, and if he continues kind of on the track that he's been on, in my opinion anyway, from this campaign forward, I think he's made leaps and bounds of progress from the first term, or
Yeah.
after losing the second term, or the 2020 election anyway, and seeing the way he acted after that was very childlike, very, not the way you should be acting as a grown man, let alone the president of the United States.
Yeah,
But I agree with you. I think that it's a lot of his people that are telling him, don't do
Stop it.
this. Yeah, exactly.
We won, bro. Stop it.
Well, exactly. Well, even before that, saying, look, this is what America loves about you.
Yeah.
They love that you're no nonsense. They love that when you say you're going to do something, most likely you're going to do it.
Yeah.
Here's what they don't like about you. They don't like
Mhm.
you talking about people this way, or saying things about this people, or calling reporters idiots. They don't like that for the most part. You're right. There's probably a section of America that's like, yeah, get him, Trump, but the rest of us are going, stop.
No, there is, but it's it doesn't take much to realize that like you get some short tactical wins from that kind of behavior where it feels good for a second.
Right.
And then once that instant gratification is over, you're back with, oh crap. Like,
Yeah.
we've just basically broadened the divide that is already here, that it just doesn't need to be like it is. So
Right.
I had one friend. So I'm very independent when it comes to politics, and I know a lot of people say that, but like my voting record would also show that. It's not just like, oh, I'm independent because I have a brain. I'm independent because depending on what's going on, I see the merits and the drawbacks from both parties, since we're stuck with the two-party system in our country, right?
Right.
So there's with social media, I don't really social media. But you know, when I do, like I really kind of screen my calls, if you will, on Facebook, and I just don't do toxic people. And so in the past, if there's people, you know, usually the trends that I would see was conservatives calling liberals idiots.
Snowflakes.
And some, huh?
So I was gonna say snowflakes.
Or yeah, snowflakes, idiots, anything that's like that. Like I had to cut those people out, man. I had to cut those people out.
Yeah.
Even if I'm like, oh, that is kind of like, you just don't need to do that. And then,
Yeah, even if you agree with the point they're making, you don't agree with their delivery. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really important the way we talk to it. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know why people think they get away with that and that it's good.
Right.
And then I had one friend, I mean, I don't know if we'd be friends anymore because after the election, he made it very clear that anyone that voted this way was all these terrible things that I would never say to anyone that I fought in a war with, that I knew from their actual behavior and practices that they were not those things. And if anything, they were champions of all the good things that we from us.
Well, it's really crazy to me how they come to these conclusions. There was a viral video going around. I forgot the girl's name. She's a young girl, and she does that whole man on the street thing where you got the microphone and you're just talking to people out on the street. And this one girl was telling her that she was a white supremacist. And the girl goes, where's your evidence? What do you mean I'm a white supremacist? Where's your evidence of that? She goes, well, did you vote for Trump? This is back in 2020. She goes, did you vote for Trump? She goes, yeah, I voted for Trump. She goes, well, there you go. You're a white supremacist.
Yeah.
And like they equal those two things. Like it's impossible for you to have voted for Trump and not be a white supremacist. Like those two things cannot coexist together. If you voted for Trump, you definitely 100% are a white supremacist. I'm like,
right.
Whoa.
Well, and I'm just being honest here. Like back in the days of like the Bush years, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was, when with that very small circle of people that I was honest, that I shared things about, usually over drinks or whatever, I'd be honest about how I felt some of the criticisms, and I was in the military, so I couldn't do that publicly, but I'd be honest, within friends, amongst friends about my opinions about some things that I didn't think were going well. And I would get accused of being like, oh, you're from California, you're this, you're that, all these names and all this. And I'm like, okay, you're just anybody that's going to draw a conclusion, like if you're going to be that simple, and then you're going to be ugly. It's one thing if you just like, hey, I don't care what you think, and live and let live. I'm fine with that. Like I'd rather you be, apathetic to this stuff than actually be ugly and draw conclusions off of no information, no data, because you just feel good about being on someone else's side and us versus them. Like, I just can't deal with that in my life, man. So I have to cut those people out. And I couldn't believe I was doing. I'm like, am I actually like cutting this person out? But I'm like, dude, it wasn't, I didn't say anything to them. I was like, I'm not, like, you just said it. I don't need to have any more conversation with you. If you think like that enough to take the time to put that text out to everyone, knowing that you're calling out some of your friends as all these terrible things. Right. Well, I guess that, we were never really friends. You just,
But you see, there's definitely a difference between you saying you want to cut toxic people out of your life just because they're affecting your life, right? That's different than somebody saying I unfriended every Facebook friend that I saw voted for Trump. They're all gone. That's not what you're talking about. You're just saying, look, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but you're not talking about people that are having discussions with disagreements and they're, even a friendly argument, if we want to call it that. You're talking about toxic, of just resorting to name calling, mudslinging, like just stupid stuff like that.
So I had one old friend that posted, like, I'm really disappointed in my fellow Americans right now. It didn't bother me at all. I was like, okay, you know what? From your perspective, I totally understand that. Like, that's cool, right? Like, that's fine. You're showing, hey, I really don't like this. That is your right to say that. And you're not calling anybody any names. You're just saying, I disagree with you. Right. God bless you. Right. Like, go for it. Yeah. This person was like out there calling everybody racist, bigot, all these terrible things. And I'm like, well, okay, that's different. That is toxic. That's not you saying how you feel. That's you being gross. And, whatever satisfaction that he got from putting that out there, he just really outed himself to me as someone who's not as smart as I thought they were.
Right.
You know?
And I mean, for me, I have no problem with somebody making that statement. The problem I have is when I question them on the statement and they won't talk to me about it. You know, like if you label me racist, that's a pretty big deal. I mean, that's you're not just like making fun of my shirt. Like you're
Yeah.
accusing me of hating people of other ethnicities. That's a
Right.
very big claim. And if you make that claim and I say, well, what do you mean by that? Can you give me an example of what do you mean by that I'm racist? You know? And most of the time they just won't even entertain the question. They'll just be like, well, screw you and walk away. You know, but when they do entertain it, it's usually something like what I just said. Oh, would you voted for Trump?
Well,
It's
yeah.
it's like, well, that's not the definition of racism as somebody who votes for Trump. That's not what that means. You need to show how I am doing something or saying something in my life
Yeah.
that would fit that characteristic of not liking other people simply because they're part of a different ethnic background than me, you know?
Yeah. No, I'm right in the same spot you are with that. I just choose not to suffer fools when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah, that's
like
something I need to learn myself.
Well, I mean, like, what am I going to win with them, right?
Right.
Like this guy already drew the line in the sand. He said, he made it very, very clear.
Mm-hmm.
When I already know you're basing these conclusions off of nothing, off of this conclusion that you made that all people that don't agree with me are evil, are
Right.
bad.
Right.
Well, what discussion am I going to have? Like you already ended the discussion.
Yes.
I mean, that was it. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Because
Nothing.
the statement they made says that they have, what's that old phrase from the old days? Don't bother me with the facts. My mind's made up.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of where they're at. They're like, I've already dug my heels in. I've already put
Yeah.
my flag in the ground on this hill. And there's nothing you can say to me to change my mind. And I hope and pray that there's not a single topic on the planet that I am ever like that about.
Yeah.
I am always open. I mean, I'm very strong-willed and very opinionated, and the things that I talk about are things that I feel like I've researched very well, and then I have a pretty good grasp on why I believe what I believe about things. But I would never make the statement, and no one can ever convince me otherwise.
Yeah.
Because I'm open. Come convince me otherwise. It doesn't mean that I'm just going to listen to everything you say and buy it and say, oh, well, that's right. I guess I'll change my view. No, but if you can present something that is going to make me think otherwise, I'm all for it, you know. And a lot of times people will criticize, well, Ryan, when has that ever happened? When has that ever happened? And maybe I can only name a few times, and they take that to mean as me being narrow-minded and stubborn. And I'm like, well, that's not really what it is. It's just that, again, I've carefully researched what I believe. And
Yeah,
it's going to take somebody like literally showing me evidence against what I believe. That's what it's going to take. And just because nobody's doing that doesn't mean I am narrow-minded, right? It just
I try to tell my kids, I said, you know, I understand people having strong opinions,
mm-hmm.
but what I don't respect is someone having a strong opinion that isn't based off of anything.
Yes.
Someone being opinionated as their nature,
mm-hmm.
that isn't necessarily a good thing, because if
Right.
you're opinionated by nature and it's not based off of the situation because you haven't really looked into it, because you're in an echo chamber, or you're just kind of like identifying with the group. Hey, what do we think about this? Like, I don't care what side of the freaking aisle you're on. I'm not going to, you've already lost a lot of credibility with me at that
Right.
point.
Right.
Now, if you put a lot of thought into things and then you have a strong opinion, that's totally fine whether I agree with it or not. Like,
Totally.
but
Totally.
I don't, I've known some people that need to have a strong opinion on everything. Like,
mm-hmm.
dude, you're not going to get interrogated. Like, chill. You don't,
Right.
you don't need to have a strong opinion on something that you
Right.
haven't looked into. Like,
Yeah.
you don't need to figure it out. Like, it's
Yeah.
okay. You're not the one making the decision.
Yeah. You don't have to die on every single hill that's out there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think, and so what about this though? Because I think for me, the situation becomes not so much that the one side isn't presenting evidence or whatever, but it's like, it's a different mindset. Like generally speaking, if I'm in a debate or a discussion with someone who's very left leaning, their argumentation and their facts, for lack of a better word, that they're presenting is a lot of times their feelings. It's based on their feelings, right? To where somebody on the right, like me, I lean right. I tend to base things more on logic and facts and actual like data, right? And it's hard to have a discussion like that if I'm presenting, well, here's why I think this and XYZ, and they say, well, I don't care about your data because I feel otherwise, or that I don't like the way that sounds, or that's kind of the argumentation generally. And it's almost like, well, how do you even have a conversation with that? You know what I mean? And it goes from both sides because they're looking at me like this guy's got no feeling.
Because if you look at it like, hey, I just prevented you data. And if you consider in your mind, you're considering that data as facts, or you need, like, for us to have this conversation, you need to provide countering evidence.
Right.
Like I don't think that's always fair. I certainly don't look at things like that because, like, for me, the purpose of having a discussion about something a lot of times is to explore it, not to. I'm not trying to debate to win. Right. Because the fact is like I can't actually go in and confirm the data. I don't care if Fox News put it out, CNN, MSNBC. Right. I can't confirm that data. Like, how did they spin it? Like, I've done enough, like, just working in the government to play with numbers and do the different things that we do to make a story, to understand, like, I think a lot of times there's skepticism from any side, whether it's the left or the right. On like, well, what is that data really saying? And then also a lot of times data-driven decisions can just be the wrong thing. They just can be. Sometimes there is a moral imperative that goes beyond the practical outcome of something. Okay. Where that is where the push comes to shove. Now everything can't be like that, and that's why that's why I'm not, like, I wouldn't say I'm left or right either way, really. Right. Some things sometimes it's not the winningest formula, but it's the one that you need to do because it's the right thing. And that can be difficult for people that are really focusing on data-driven decisions because they're like, no, like the right thing to do is the thing that brings us the most revenue or that, propels our mission forward the best. It's like, well, that might be true, but try to think of that in a 10-year plan instead of a 2-week plan where you're trying to get a 2-week win. Right. Think about if you have a healthy organization that does things because it's the right thing to do over the course of 5 years, 10 years, you might actually be more effective. So there's just so many different filters to put on, and it's very difficult to argue those when especially when someone's throwing out numbers. It's like, okay, like, gosh, I guess I can't really argue with you because you just said numbers. You just gave me a percentage. Like, what am I going to do? Like, no, it's 33%. Like, you're wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So, I mean, like, if I'm understanding you correctly, like, it'd be like if you had a person, let's say, that came into a high position at a company or a corporation, and they came in, and the employees that have been working there for 30 plus years, all of them, they know the ins and outs, they know what they're doing. And this new boss basically comes in. We've all experienced this at different jobs, right? This new guy comes in, he's a higher rank, because he came in at a higher rank, because let's say he's got a doctorate in whatever field it's in. And he comes in and he looks at the data and he says, okay, data says we need to run this business this way for product profitability, for all these different things, right? And he just runs it strictly on that. He doesn't get to know the employees. He knows nothing about them. He hasn't talked to them ever. He doesn't know them on a personal level. He just sees them as names on a paper and how many years they've worked there. And he starts changing all this stuff around. Now, that doesn't take into account how that's going to affect the employees, right? So is that kind of what you're saying? Like, they'd be more of a data-driven decision-making as opposed to getting them involved as well?
Yeah, there's just so many different ways. Like, especially when you're dealing with, like, large groups of people, there's just so many second and third order effects every time you make a decision. Like, a lot of times data is taken, there's so much data if you look at it. Data can be used to kind of lead you towards a certain outcome or a certain decision or course of action. But if you looked at a different piece of data, that was focusing on a different part of the problem, it might lead you to a different course of action than the first. And so, it's really, a lot of times people get so busy in kind of winning at all costs, whether it's just being right about their ideals or whether it's winning against a competitor. They get so focused on winning at all costs, they find a way to kind of rationalize, and then they'll pick the data that works for them. So I understand where people have a general skepticism when someone comes in and they're saying, well, I've got facts. And I mean, and I've listened to Ben Shapiro and I've listened to the Change My Mind guy, and I've listened to these guys, and I'm like, man, I could see people really buying into this and being like, yeah, look, like they owned them. It's like, dude, I sit down with a guy that's got an encyclopedia of information for a prepared debate. And I'm going to sit down as a college student and I'm going to like, you're going to show me up and show everybody how dumb liberals are.
Right.
Like, I can't stand that stuff, you know?
Okay.
Anyway, that's kind of what I know I kind of digress there, but
no, these are all great. This is awesome. These are great. The reason why this is such an important thing, what we're talking about right now, is because these are the kind of things people need to be considering when they have conversations with people, when they have discussions with people, because that's how things are going to change.
Yeah.
Yelling at each other, calling names, all that's not going to get us nowhere. It's really not going to get us anywhere. And I love what you said about not going into a debate to win a debate. When you're in a conversation, and I said this multiple times myself, when I go into a conversation with somebody, even if we're disagreeing about something, my motive should never be to win the argument. That shouldn't be my motive. My motive should be
understanding.
Right. Or to increase my understanding, for sure. Like to be open, like I just said earlier, to be open to that, for sure. But the main focus should always be to get to the truth of the issue. Whether that means the person I'm talking to has it, or I have it, or neither one of us have it, it's there somewhere. The point should be to get to that. But so often we get involved in our pride, and we go in with that. Well, I got to win at all costs. I got to, like you just said, I got to own this guy. Ben Shapiro owns blah, blah, blah. And you have all these videos, like you said, and that's the tagline because people feed on that. But I've seen so many debates where maybe one guy happens to he seems more studious, or he's a better public speaker. He's wearing a suit and a tie, and he looks more distinguished and all this. And then they talk about all this stuff, and then the debate is over, and everybody declares this guy over here the winner of the debate. And I always look at that and go, yes, but what information? What do you win? Right? What do you win? And what truth was discovered here? What conclusion do they come to where they're like, okay, this is the fact that we can now pull out of this. We did the research, we did the data, we talked to this people, we talked to this guy, and this is a pretty solid chunk of factual information here. You don't see that. It's more like, oh, this guy definitely won the debate. Yeah, but how? Like, what do you mean he won the debate? Because he made the guy look stupid? That doesn't mean he's right. I mean, I can be totally wrong and still make people look stupid. It doesn't mean I'm right.
Not only that, but what we forget is that you're alienating all the people that whatever their organizing principle was that they shared with the guy on the left that just got owned. You just alienated all of them. And not the way you think you did. You didn't show them how stupid they are.
Yeah.
No, they're resenting you.
Right. Yeah.
Or for manipulating the venue to put them in a position to get owned, which, anybody that owns the show has a responsibility to do that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm doing it to me right now.
Yeah, I want to delve into that too. But first I want to ask you, do you think is there ever a topic or a fact, let's use the word fact, just for example, that is a proven fact? Like it can be something that I can say, this is true. And then maybe somebody doesn't agree that that's true, but I have all the facts in front of me. And instead of them providing evidence to the contrary or showing me something, to prove my facts wrong or whatever, they just, like you said, they walk away thinking, oh, that guy's a jerk. And they walk away. Like, do you ever think does it ever happen that way to where the guy who is standing on the factual statement can be in the right place? Or do you think no matter what, nobody should ever walk away thinking we're a jerk? Is that only for certain topics and situations?
I mean, there's a certain point where you have to say, okay, I'm going to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. And if you can't control someone's reaction.
Sure.
So if I'm doing the right thing and I'm being professional, polite and all that, but I'm saying, hey, this is a fact. And I've had to do this at work a million times, right? Mm-hmm. This is the fact. This is why you didn't get promoted. Like
Right.
this is what we needed to see. We talked about this 6 months ago and we didn't see it,
Okay.
or you're not like you did well, but I could only push the top 10%.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't the top 10% this year.
Right.
Like they might walk away mad because in their
Yeah.
truth, they are the best, whatever sergeant that ever walked the earth because, and I should just know that.
Right.
I should somehow just use my superpowers as their supervisor to just know that they are the best.
Yes.
Objectively. And I mean, all I can look at a certain point is like this is what I looked at. This is how I made my decision. And they walk away. So that's just an example, but you have to be able to accept that. Yes, sometimes people are going to be mad at you for that.
Right.
But I do think there's a difference between that and like showing up to a casual conversation with facts on hand so I can show you with my facts that you can't confirm right now, but just trust me, they're facts.
Right.
I've seen people manipulate that situation a lot, and I don't like that either. Okay. I'd rather, and I mean, I had to say this a lot at work throughout my military career, but I'd rather be, it's great to be right. And I know a lot of people that have been right and they've left the military or their job or their whatever, very upset, very angry, hurt, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. I'd rather be effective than be right, if that makes sense.
No, that's perfect.
Yeah, like with and that doesn't mean that I sacrifice my integrity or that I go against facts. But if I alienate you, but I'm right, and I go, truth hurts, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I'm kind of like that when I see people do that a lot, I'm thinking, okay, you got a hole in you somewhere. Yeah. Like you need to have this dominance over this person to have this satisfaction, to get that gratification, and I think that. I mean, that's just part of human nature. I think we see that a lot, and it's disguised as I'm just telling it how it is. It's like, yeah, you are, but like you could also do that and not be mean about it or rude.
Right. Right. There's a right way to present something and a wrong way to present something. And I think for me, when I talk with people, it's always like you have to know your audience. You have to be able to start recognizing if there's going to be fruit in this conversation or not.
Yeah.
Right.
Why are we arguing? Why are
correct. We right. And again, like
for my ego, or are we trying to understand each other?
Right. Right. Or it could be not even about ego. It could be literally that someone really does have the factual information to prove this, whatever he's trying to prove.
Yeah.
And the person is just not mature minded enough.
Yeah.
Yet to receive that. And that
happens all the time.
Correct.
Like, hey, you know what? This person's just not ready.
Right.
They're not ready to have this conversation. They're not ready to be honest about this.
Yes.
And when I read that, I go, you know what? How bad do I need to have this conversation?
Right. It's pointless at that point. Like, why? Because then I think to myself, I can keep going with this and it's going to make this person really upset. They're going to be mad at me. They're going to call me all the names in the book and it's going to cause a conflict. And this is the kicker, and it's going to be fruitless. Right. Because if I can get through, they're going to get mad at me. They're going to be angry. They're going to call me all these names. But at the end of all that, there's going to be fruit from this conversation. Because I've been on the other end of that. I've had conversations with people where I'm angry at them. How dare you say this? How blah, 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 blah. And then the next day, after I've had time to think about what they said, my life changes. Yeah. Because of what they said to me, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, that changed
me too.
everything. So, I mean, conflict isn't always bad. People getting angry at you is not always bad, but it takes a certain amount of wisdom to be able to tell when you're in a conversation with somebody if it's going to be fruitful or not. And sometimes we just need to back away and say, they're not ready for this yet. You know?
Well, and then like if when I'm being honest with myself at the end of the day after a conflict, if I'm looking and if I'm being honest with myself and there's something else, and I'm a human being, right? I have my bad days. There's something else that was motivating me to put that person in their place other than it being the right thing.
Right.
Then I've got to get really honest with myself. And I might either owe the person an apology or I might need to learn, hey, I got a hole in my game and I really need to be aware of this. Right. I let my ego or I let my insecurity drive me towards this behavior. That's something I have to put on myself. And just because maybe I'm doing better, I'm having a good day and I'm doing better with that, I also try to show grace to someone who's having a bad day or hasn't learned that, because man, everybody's on a journey,
Right.
And if I think about how enlightened I was at 25 years old,
Right.
I would have owned 25-year-old me.
But see, that's the wisdom, right? That's the hindsight. You can look in the back at the old you and be like, oh man.
I would have given him a
Oh
hug.
man.
Said,
Yeah.
"Keep it up, Dad."
Oh man. So not all.
This is fun, by the way.
Oh yeah, dude, this is a blast. This is a lot of fun. I mean, it's kind of it's really fun because this is stuff that you and I haven't really ever talked about, because back when we used to hang out, we were like way too into ourselves and into what we were into to really
just
care
about
this.
like the perfect bra size. We weren't. That's what we got heated about.
Oh my gosh, dude. Oh man. There's like so much stuff off the record we could talk about too that just like it's just that's the way it was.
Isn't it funny to think of those moments that we like? I still to this day I feel shame when I think about some of the ways I acted.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. It's part of the process, right?
Mm-hmm.
I tell my kids, I'm like, hey, it's okay to feel that. Like, don't then feel ashamed for feeling ashamed. It's okay to feel that, but just show yourself grace, because you really can't you can't forgive anyone else if you don't forgive yourself.
Right.
And we're all learning.
Yeah, and we're where we are today because of those experiences and because of learning through that kind of thing. Like you talked earlier about self-reflection and looking at who you really are, and you have to go through that stuff to start to realize that, because back then I wouldn't have admitted that. I wouldn't have been like, oh yeah, my whole life is a facade. My whole appearance and my reputation is all, none of it's really true.
You weren't ready for that.
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, it would have been too big of a shot to my ego.
Yep.
So, yeah. So how about before we leave, we'll talk some about world issues in a second, but real quick, have you been following at all like some of Trump's like the picks that he's putting in place right now as he's going through and kind of picking his cabinet and he's picking?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really been following.
Okay.
Okay. I know like the general like stuff that's going on is totally typical, right?
Yeah. Well, I would disagree. I don't think it's typical at all. I think it's very...
I don't mean the selections are typical.
Oh, okay.
I mean the reactions are typical.
Oh, of course.
They're exactly what I would expect.
Yeah. Yeah, he could appoint Mother Teresa for something, and certain groups of people be like, oh, that lady, she's a prostitute. They're going to drag her through the mud just because of who's selecting her, right?
Yeah, I mean they it's Spin City, right? Like, but I do think it's interesting. I'm interested to see how it goes, because and like Felicia and I were talking about this. I'm like, you can really go from being like I have a mandate, right? Like look at how I crushed this thing. The American people want action, and we got the House and we got the Senate. Like, we're going to make things happen. But you can go really quickly, especially if you start threatening the pockets of those people, the House and the Senate, congressmen that are in the pockets of, big oil, big industry, defense, all these different pockets of money that allow all of our politicians to be multimillionaires, despite their $130,000 a year salaries, right?
Right. Yeah.
They, as soon as you start threatening that, you can go from like hero to, dictator to, now everything is a executive order, because you're even losing your own cabinet. Right. And so it'll be interesting. I don't see him doing that, because politically he's been more conservative with that type of stuff than a lot of other presidents have in the past, actually. Right. But I mean, it always worries you when you start like, no, we're going to do it different. It's like, okay, but is there still going to be an adult in charge? Right. Because this isn't just a money making thing where you can accept risk. This is, this is the country.
Right. This is billions of people lives, And
it's relationships that matter, 20 years down the road with other countries.
Right. Well, and that's just it, right? And I think that's something that I look at what he's doing now as opposed to what he did in 2016 and through to 2020, his first term, basically. And I just see him making picks that are, some people on one side would say, well, they're harsh, they're too harsh, and the other side, and I think this is
trying to get crap done.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And people, whenever I talk to people about, the problems in the country and what do we need to do? What do we do with government, big government, small government, blah, blah, blah. one of the biggest things that comes up is, the whole system's just jacked. We need to tear it all down and start over, right? That's usually what people say.
It's so funny that you brought this up. Yeah, I've got an anecdote for this.
Okay, so that's kind of what they say. Yeah. But then, like, you look at some of the picks he's putting in there, and that's kind of what it seems to be the plan, right? Yeah. And then, but a lot of people are like, oh man, for example, the guy that he picked for the border, right? You got all these people like, oh, the border is a mess. You got all these people coming in illegally by so much more under Biden than under Trump. You got all these arguments going on, right? So Trump puts this guy in, and he's just saying what sounds like really harsh things. They keep playing the clip where they asked him, so how do you stop? Don't you care about families being separated when they're deported? Don't you feel about families being separated and deported?
No, I want to separate the children. No,
that's what you think. That's what they think he's going to say, right? But he goes, no. He goes, that's not a problem at all. I mean, no, he doesn't say it's not a problem at all. He goes, no, we're going to deport, blah, blah, blah. And then she finally corners him and says, yeah, but don't you see a way that can make it so families aren't separated? He goes, of course there is. And she goes, well, what is it? He goes, we'll just deport them all together. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, where the person asking that question, they're trying to argue for a way that, well, we can't separate the families, therefore they all need to stay here in America. Right. And he's like, no, we're not going to separate them. We'll send them all back together. They can go back to their home country together. We're not going to separate them. And people see that as harsh, but then the other side sees that as that's getting it done.
Practical, right?
It's practical, right? And again, that's when it gets into the logical versus the feelings, because does that not mean there's going to be people that we know personally that might be drastically affected like that? Do we have somebody who's a friend of ours that's going to get deported with his family? Yeah. That's going to be like, dang, I love that guy. He's like my friend. I work with him. He's awesome. And now he got deported. But see, that's like the emotional feeling part of me where I feel for my friend and I love my friend. But then when I get in the logical following of the law version of me, I think, well, he is technically breaking the law. Right. So,
well, it's kind of like what we were talking about at the beginning, right? There's times when you look at things and, you look at it idealistically, you're like, oh, but that's bad. I want people to be together, not apart. And I want people to get to be where they are to better themselves and their families. Right. Mm-hmm. But then when you looked at it from practical, well, how do you let everybody do that? Like, that's not sustainable. That's why we're in this. That's why we're having these problems. And then like, wait, you mean we can't come up with a system that like looks at every single family individually and then based off of merit or like if they know somebody, we let them in. Like, there's a certain point where you just have to, that's why it's so tricky. And that's why it's important to put leaders in place that have hearts that care, but are also not afraid to do what needs to be done. Right.
And that's hard, right? That's hard to find people that are both.
Very hard. Yeah. And that's why it's so important,
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's so important.
Yeah. So what was your anecdote?
So Mackenzie, my daughter, she was talking about the department. Sorry, Mackenzie. I don't like Facebook's like Facebook. That's for boomers.
Yeah.
It's all about that Insta.
I just got the Insta like within the last 6 months. And it was really just because I wanted to promote the show.
You're an influencer now, man.
I am, dude. Yeah.
Big time. All the things. You got to get on the X. I'm sure you've been on the X.
I am on the X. Like I said, I mean, I got Rogan in my sights, man. I'm almost up to where Rogan's at.
So she was talking about the Department of Education issue of, like Trump saying that he's hiring this person and they're just like dumping the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And Felicia's like, because she's
good. Okay.
Definitely become I think at least right now she's a Republican. I mean, she still calls herself an independent, but she's getting pretty conservative, which is fine. Right?
Yeah.
Mackenzie's worried about, well, hey, how do we have any kind of standardization so that someone that lives in this state can still be guaranteed? Like that should matter. Right. And I'm like, okay, ideologically, you're absolutely right. Mm-hmm. And I told her two things. I said, first of all, this is one of the things that frustrates me, but Trump talks a lot of smack and he says, we're just completely getting rid of the Department of Education.
Right.
I had to assure her, I said, look, maybe they're turning it on its head and they're going to completely restructure it. But as long as the federal government is giving money to states for education, which it'll continue doing it, there will be some level of oversight and regulation.
Right.
There just will. because all it takes is, pretty soon you're just like giving money away to states, right? Like, no, there's going to be some level of oversight, but what they need to solve this problem differently because we're based off of an old model and this and that.
Well, but this is a good example of where Trump uses words that aren't always the best words.
Right.
Right. Because I don't think he means get rid of the Department of Education and then we're just not going to have anything there.
Right.
What he more means is a reformation of the Department of Education.
No,
he's not.
No, exactly. But someone that isn't aware that maybe like there's always some kind of government oversight with a federally funded program might really think that like this dude's actually getting rid of the federal, like any kind of oversight over the Department of Education. And like this state's going to do really well and this state's going to fall apart and those poor kids and they're, and not realizing like, hey, we had like the problems. Some of our problems are too big when we try to manage them from the top. And sometimes you have to carve out problems smaller. Right. That's just problem solving in general. And so, like we just had that discussion. I mean, she felt better afterwards because she realized, okay, it was rhetoric, right? And it was semantics that kind of got me into trouble thinking that he meant this. But the truth is that it really wasn't that bad. And I don't know. It was just kind of an example of that you were talking, and I think it's such a big deal with the way things the words that are said. Yeah. And I've mentioned before, this goes through everything. This is big in a marriage even. Oh, right. Yeah. When I use words, I need Bethany to gather my correct meaning that I mean from my heart by using those words. And it doesn't always work that way. It doesn't. Then we have to, oh man, you're doing it wrong.
I'm sure that's not shocking news.
It's been so easy for me.
yeah, but it's just like so often we have to keep going with the conversation because it's like I might say something or she might say something to me and then I slink off somewhere. I'm all ticked off.
Right.
And then later she comes to me, she's like, "You've been kind of standoffish the last couple hours. You okay?" I said, "Well, no, you said this or I might even say you said this and the words I'm saying she said aren't even the words she said."
Right. That's what you heard.
That's what I heard. Exactly. And that's a huge problem. And I think Trump has suffered from that since day one, where he says these things. And that's why people say, oh, Trump's racist, Trump's sexist, Trump's transphobic, Trump's all this stuff. And I always have to kind of get down to the bones of it. It's like, well, what do you mean by that? Like, can you show me something he said or did that is racist or is sexist or whatever?
Well, unless you've really, obviously my friend that, I'm not friends with anymore, right? On Facebook or whatever.
You've been kicked to the curb.
That I worked with for over a decade. I went to combat with him. Like, but this guy, right? In his mind, he really is those things. So anybody that would vote to give that person power back is subscribing to those things. And that's as far as his imagination went with it, and that's a discredit to him, but that's why we have to use critical thinking when we're making conclusions about people.
Right.
You got to really be careful before you make a hard conclusion on somebody.
Yes.
You might be, falsely judging them.
Right. Right. And the other side of that is not only are you false judging somebody, you start spreading that around.
Absolutely.
And especially among a lot of the younger generation right now, they don't fact check anything really. They just believe whatever they see on TikTok.
I don't blame them. There's too much information, honestly.
Yeah, I know.
Like, can you imagine? Like, I look at my kids and like, I'm like, how do you, like, we can't relate to that. Like, we can't compare our childhood to theirs. Mm-hmm. And it was the same with me in the military. Like, I had these old heads that like were my generation that are like these young whippersnappers, like just like the generation that before us did, right? They don't care about anything. They're just blah, blah, blah. They've all got ADHD and this and that. And I'm like thinking, dude, look at everything they have to be responsible for compared to us. Like, all I had to do is show up to work on time, shaved, and then just pay attention at work and, and do what I was told, and I didn't get in trouble, at least for the first year in the military.
It's like Forrest Gump, man. Forrest Gump said it best.
Finances, you need to be in charge of your personnel file. They have all this stuff that they have to do.
Right.
It's information overload. How could they really, and there's so much bad data out there. Where do they go? Where do they go for facts?
So what do you think's the solution then? I mean, where do you just believe whatever is out there floating around, or how do you make decisions? How do you decide on what's true and what's false?
Well, when it's something that a lot of times I can't really fully know anymore because I don't have a news source that I trust.
Right.
I don't. I'm just being totally honest.
Not CNN. CNN is the trustworthy
I
news
have
source.
zero news sources that I trust. Zero.
Yeah.
Can I tell you something funny?
Of course.
So I used to listen to a lot of Chinese news,
Okay.
right? Used to listen to a lot of
Because you can. I couldn't do that.
because I can, and it was language practice, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and we wanted to learn about current events,
Mm-hmm.
and so a lot of times I would listen to news in Chinese about China, and it was exactly what you would expect, right? State-run media. It's exactly what you would expect, unless it was VO, like Voice of America, which is different. But if I'm listening to actual from China newscasts, exactly what you would expect. Everything's kind of slanted to show that the government is perfect and this and that.
Right.
But when they reported on America, it was the most unbiased, like fair and balanced news that I could get about America
Really?
from freaking China.
That's awesome.
Because they didn't have a mandate based off, I'm sure if it was a conflict with China, there would, but they didn't have a mandate to report a certain way. So they were actually reporting the news objectively based off of like objective information.
Get out of here.
No, I'm not.
You mean like the news teams are supposed to report objectively?
It was revolutionary, bro.
Why have we lost that? Why can't we just do that anymore?
I'm telling you, man, like money, there's just so much at stake now. Like everything is such big business, and it's that win at all costs. And that's why, kind of going back to why I'll never just go completely like conservative versus liberal or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I'll always be what my friends used to make fun of me as a liberal conservative, is because I just like there has to be someone to say, hey, it doesn't matter that seems to solve all of our problems. That's the wrong thing. And you always have to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's just, I just thought that was so ironic. I don't know how you solve that problem. Mm-hmm. I think that society as an entity, right, is trying to solve that problem. And it's going to be interesting to see what comes out of it, because it's been a long time now. This information superhighway became information overload. Mm-hmm. Became, an information like extravaganza, right? It's like half of it's bad, half of it's made up, half of it's manipulation. Right. I don't know how you have three halves, but I just did it.
Hey, in a world where there's no actual truth, you can do whatever
there's
you
no
want,
objective truth. So
that's right.
My truth is that there's three halves. Sorry.
So I want to go back to that real quick, kind of what something we were talking about earlier, and I think we'll end on this for the political discussion. But when talking about, like, you had mentioned earlier, like somebody who's, let's say, a really studied, like, let's say a professor or something who spent years and years researching, getting into a debate with like a college student who doesn't have that experience, have that knowledge base necessarily. And when you said that, it reminded me of kind of like what Charlie Kirk does. I don't know if you know Charlie Kirk. Kind of similar to, very similar actually, I think, to the Steven Crowder that you were talking about.
Steven Crowder, yeah.
The Change My Mind guy, right? Yeah. So Charlie Kirk would go set up a table in a booth, kind of similar to what Steven Crowder did, and he'll do like on a college campus, a lot of times at a very liberal college campus. Charlie Kirk is a younger guy. I don't even think he's 30 yet. I could be wrong on that, but I don't think he's 30 yet. Very conservative leaning, very smart person. He's one of my favorites to watch. But my point is, he'll set up shop there.
I'm looking him up.
Oh yeah, look him up. You probably recognize him. I'm sure he's been especially up to the election. He's been all over the place.
Yeah, I know. Yep.
Yeah. So he'll do that, and he'll let people come up and ask any questions that you want. And I think that what I see as the biggest issue, and it really illustrates the point I make about logical versus feelings and that kind of whole thing, and pride, and it brings pride in, of course, is what I see in a lot of those Charlie Kirk videos, where he will, maybe he does. Maybe he knows more than them. Maybe he has more facts. Maybe he has more data. Maybe, or has more statistical proof of things, right? And he'll present something, and they'll come back with, oh yeah, well, whatever, XYZ. and he'll say, well, that's not true. And here's why. Here's the statistic that proves what you just said wrong. So it kind of leaves the feelings out. Let's say that person feels that what they're saying is true, but over here, he's got data that literally proves what they're saying is false. Let's say they say 80% of the world is vegetarian or something. And Charlie Kirk says, no, wait a minute. There's lots of statistics on this. Look at actually only 20% of the world is vegetarian.
Right.
Now, this guy on the other side can say, well, let me put it this way. What he should say is, oh, I've never seen those statistics before, but I can see that you're correct. Yeah. I will now change my view and say that you're right. Only 20% of the world is vegetarian, right?
Right.
But that's not usually what happens. What usually happens is, well, your mama's a prostitute, right? Yeah. Is the response. And it's like, well, what in the world does that have to do with the statistics I just showed you to disprove the claim that you just made?
And hey, she got me through college.
That's right. But I mean, do you see what I'm saying?
That woman worked hard.
Yeah. But I mean, to me, that shows. I watch something like that, and I think to myself, that's not necessarily an issue of a guy who's showing up on a college campus with all his studiousness and all his knowledge and wisdom and stats, just to try to show some young college kid that he's a moron, right? Like he's actually got reasons why he's trying to promote and prove what he's trying to prove. And the fact that the college student doesn't just listen to the facts, and now he could say, well, here's some facts that debunk your facts. And that's fine. That'd be great. That'd be a better answer than, well, you're a moron and I think you're ugly. Because that just shows that you don't have an answer to what you're trying to prove. And instead of just surrendering, instead you're going to go out calling names, right?
No, you're totally right on that, obviously. Like it's never justified to like shut down logic and rational thought.
Right.
And to just dive into, well, I feel this way. And I would never prescribe that. I don't, that's awful. That's evil, right?
Sure,
that leads to evil. But I guess my frustration with these types of like venues that they set up like this is like, this isn't like a lot of this is entertainment value, right? Mm-hmm. Like you already know the type of people that we're going to highlight on this segment. Like we know immediately, I know what you're doing, right? Like I know what the point is to show, like, look at these left-leaning students. This is what's, this is what our universities are building. This is the culture and the environment. And the frustrating thing is like on the right, you have like a very like it's facts driven and so on and so forth. And that just should seize the day and there should be no nuanced conversation because these are facts, because I'm fighting against the person on the far left that's saying, I don't care about facts. All I care about is moral high ground, whatever it is that day. Right. And so those are the people that are arguing with each other. That doesn't make sense. Right. The argument should be on the nuances. It should be on the actual details and the nuances of an argument. But we don't actually get to see that play out because it's not as fun. We don't get to see that nuanced argument. We get to see, we get to see the two extremes arguing with the most vulnerable of that other side.
Sure.
For our entertainment value.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because if that is the case, what you're describing, then obviously the goal is not to get to the truth, right? Like I mentioned earlier, that should be the only point of a discussion like that. It shouldn't be to make somebody look stupid. It shouldn't be to get likes and clicks and make your YouTube video successful. It should be to get to the truth of the issue. And if you're going to be debating, for lack of a better word, somebody who is going to have that reaction. They're not actually going to be able to defend their point. They're not going to be able to do that. And they're just going to look stupid on camera. And that's all you're doing it for. Then I would agree with you and say that's
well, if you're in pre-production and the main thing you're talking about is how do we like get at them? Right. Because everything is us versus them.
Right.
And even if we try to present a more nuanced, like kind of in the margins, version of a show, at the end of the day, our goal is still to show that, to show that it's us versus them and that them is stupid, right?
Right.
And that's how do we get to there? And that's in pre-production. That's what the whole show is based on, which unfortunately that's what we get to see because that's what people want to see,
right?
Because it's not as fun to actually talk about the details and nuances of, hey, like, can we find a way to do this without going all in on this bill? Like, is this bill the right thing? Or is it, if you don't like this bill, you're just a snowflake and you're stupid, or
Right.
vice versa. If you do like this bill, you're an evil Nazi, it's like,
Right. And those are like the two sides, right? There's no middle ground there.
and that's
You're
what
one
we
of
get
those
to
two.
we get to watch the two sides exploit each other,
Right.
in whatever,
Right.
depending on whatever the format is.
Yeah.
They'll find, they're not going to have a show to actually present like, oh man, I stand corrected.
Yeah.
We're,
But see, I wish there was,
battle,
man.
us against them, and we have to win.
Yeah, that's the kind of show I want, man. I would support a show like that. I want to see, because that's always my biggest problem with debates, and I love watching debates. I've been somewhat of a debater my whole life. My parents used to tell me when I was a kid, you should have been on the debate team, because I always to be the contrarian, but I've always been that way, and I would love to see a show or a debate. I would love to see a debate where they literally will not move on from whatever the first point that one of the sides is trying to make until they get to an actual conclusion there. Just even if it takes 4 hours, like, okay, that's the only topic we're going to talk about, but that's not what happens. One guy will make a claim. Well, I think blah, blah, blah. And the other guy will say, well, I don't think that. And then they end up getting on some other topic. They never answer the first question. And then before you know it, they're on to something else. And then they do the same thing all over again. And there's never any consensus. There's never any logic or facts being brought up, really. You're never getting anywhere.
You're really gauging performance at that point.
Right.
And that's really
yes.
what it is.
And that goes back. Yes. Yes. And that's where you go back to what I was saying. Well, who won that debate? Who cares?
Everybody
I don't
lost,
care.
actually. Yeah. The American people lost.
Everybody lost because you're not getting your life's not changed at all. You're not gaining any new information. You're not, none of that stuff. Right. Yep. Have you heard of the show? It's kind of newer, I think, called Surrounded.
I don't think so.
So it's like, I've seen it on YouTube. I don't know if it's on an actual thing. I forgot the name of the group that puts it on, but there's like a chair. I'm sorry. There's like a desk in the middle of a room, and there's a chair on each side of the desk, and then all around the room there's 25 like folding chairs, and there's 25 people sitting in those chairs, and they're all holding.
That's called the House of Commons. It's like the British government.
No, it's different, and all those people are holding red flags. Okay. So then the guy that's in the middle, so he's sitting by himself with an empty chair across from him at this desk. And he has a list of claims that he's going to make over the course of 2.5 hours or however long this program goes. Right. And he'll go on with the first claim, and he'll say, my first claim is that, Kamala Harris is the best candidate that the U.S. has ever seen. Okay. And now of the 25 people around there, then it counts down from 5 to 0. And then when it gets to 0, whoever wants to get into that chair across from the person in the desk and debate them on that specific thing they just said, they all rush towards that empty chair. And whoever gets there first gets to have that discussion, okay? So then those two people start talking about it. And then through the course of their discussions, if anybody around thinks that they should move on to a new speaker, they raise that red flag up. And as soon as there's majority red flags, wow, the moderator calls it and says, okay, you've been voted off.
You're earning your airtime.
Dude, it's gnarly. It's so cool to watch. And then that person leaves, and then everybody fights for the chair again, and then it just goes around. And I think it's 20 minutes per claim. So once the timer's up 20 minutes, then he says, my next claim is, and then he'll make another claim. And they always do it to where they pit it against the people. Like one of the ones I just saw was the guy in the middle was a Kamala Harris supporter, and the 25 around were Trump supporters. Okay. Right. So that's always the way it is. Or the one time it was the Trump guy in the middle, and it was all like left wing people around. And it's not always political. I just saw one the other day. It was like it was a cop in the middle, a retired cop, and 25 criminals all around, like ex criminals, people that had done jail time. Yeah. So they debate that, or cops are this, cops are racist, cops are, police brutality, and then just going. I think it's the greatest thing I've ever seen. I
Really?
absolutely love it.
Okay, I'm gonna check it out. It's
I mean,
called Surrounded.
it's called Surrounded, yeah.
Got
And,
it.
and just type it in on, and Ben Shapiro's been in the hot seat. Charlie Kirk's been in the hot seat.
Okay.
Any number of liberals you can think of have been in the hot seat.
I really want to see that.
I think it's great. I mean, it's not everybody's cup of tea, but for my personality, I think I could watch it all day long. I could watch back-to-back episodes just nonstop. And I do at work. I just put it on at work and I'm just doing my computer stuff and I'm listening, Anyway.
We've been having so much fun with this. But sometimes it gets heated because we're all like passionate arguers in my family, but
Sure.
like for the most part, man, it's just fun.
Yeah. Passion's good, dude. I mean, passion gets a bad name. Care. Right. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's what you do with the passion that can be a problem, right?
Yep.
Like we've been talking about, like put it into a good argument, not into calling people names.
Absolutely. And you were talking about like skilled debaters, skilled orators, like Ben Shapiro. And there's a lot of things about Ben Shapiro that I really like. But there are some times that I see him using his powers for what I wouldn't consider good, but for, evil, like I'm using strong terms, but like, just being good at something. And, a lot of times I think we get impressed with these people that are really good at debating or really good at like fact, counterfact. And it's like, so what? Like, you know what I mean? What are you doing with that?
Yeah.
Like if all you're doing is great, widening the divide between you and others. Yeah. You're not really using your powers for good.
Right.
All you're doing is you're just getting the people that already agree with you to get pumped up about agreeing with you.
Right. Right.
And then like, hopefully you win the election. And if you don't, then you'll become the bad guys.
Right. Right. Well, which is why I admire people that go into the lion's den to promote what they think is true or what they believe is important, and the people that are preaching to the choir, who cares?
Yeah. I know that was a big thing for Felicia with JD Vance.
Oh, okay.
And going and doing the top, the circuit,
yes.
And into the lion's den, MSNBC and whatnot. And And I mean, I agree. I think that. Yeah. And I thought I actually was really impressed with his poise with all of it too.
Me too. Even
like,
his debate.
You're providing us that model that I want our leaders to provide.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. To the point that, not that I want, and I would never wish this in a million years, but I mean, something happens to Trump, assassination attempt works. They take him out. We got Vance, which isn't the worst thing in the world. Like he holds a lot of the same policies and principles that Trump has, and without all of the fifth grade playground banter. Right. So, it's like, okay, cool. And I think that was smart of Trump to pick him for his running mate for that exact reason, to where Biden picking Kamala Harris is like, you pick somebody that literally nobody liked. Like nobody, even on the left, right? Like even nobody liked her, even right up into the moment where it was said that she was running against Trump. And then all of a sudden she was, Gandhi's wife all of a sudden. Like she's like the greatest thing to ever walk the face of the earth. And, she just is so great and wonderful.
Gandhi was married?
No. Oh. I'm just saying. I was going to say Gandhi, but then I realized
from you today, Ryan.
Well, I was going to say I was going to say Gandhi, but I'm like, well, but Gandhi was a male, so I mean, I don't,
Grizzly Adams did have a beard.
That's right.
That was awesome.
Yeah, man. All right, dude. So God stuff. Where are you at with that? Is there a God or is there not a God?
Oh, we can't talk about that.
Oh, okay. We'll see you later then. No.
So I'm agnostic.
Okay.
Right. And that means so many different things for different people.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, what does that mean? Does that mean you're just agnostic about Christianity? So I'm agnostic, and because I don't know, like there could absolutely be a God, a creator. I don't know. I mean, I think anybody that says they know, I'd just be like, no, you don't. I mean, you can feel very strongly that or that you're right, but and maybe you feel a spiritual, like rightness from it, but you don't know, right? And so,
would you say? But you'd say the same about an atheist who says there is no God.
Absolutely,
you feel the same way about that guy, which is why you kind of take the middle ground.
100, yeah. And I mean, it's absolutely how I feel. Like I really don't know, but what I do feel strongly about is I don't believe that any of the religions, the organized religions that are, in the world, I
Mhm.
don't believe that, and I don't believe in any of those.
Okay.
So I'm definitely a heretic, for every single one of those, and that
Great,
and
man.
that I do feel strongly about.
Okay.
Not strongly enough that I go around like, I believe I am very kind to all my Christian friends, all my Jewish friends, and
Yeah.
my few Muslim friends, right?
What about your Satan worshiping friends?
No, I'm not. No, I'm against them. I don't have any.
Oh boy.
I'm against them.
Um, sorry, I'm jotting down some notes here.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with you gave me some good food here. So let's just start with God. Just and we're going to use that term at first as a very loose, generic term. We're not talking about any specific religion, any specific faith-based anything. Just the idea of some greater being that created the universe. Okay, doesn't matter what religion it is.
Right.
So, like, I guess what reasons would you have? Well, I need to be careful how I phrase this. You're not saying necessarily,
We'll get there.
yeah, you're not saying necessarily that there's no reason to believe that, but you're kind of saying there's no reason. Well, I guess I'll just ask you: Are you saying that there's no reason to believe that there is a creator?
I think there's reason for someone to believe that. I think there's reason for someone to believe that there is none.
Right, but I guess what I'm asking, see, this is why I'm trying to be careful with the way I word this.
I see the merit, and I empathize with people that feel both ways about it.
Sure.
I really do. I don't think like, oh, you're a sucker. Like I don't have any kind of like negative or like condescending feelings towards people that are believers at all.
Right.
Like I feel like I really empathize with that. I think I spent most of my, like when I was younger, I was trying to be a believer. I remember.
We used to make fun of you. We used to come home from church camp in the summer and you'd be all about Jesus all the time. We just laughed.
You're going to hell, Ryan.
Yeah. We were like, dude, shut up, dude. Who are you? And then after a couple months, you'd be back to the same old Chet. And then the next summer you'd go to summer camp again. You come back all Christianese and everything else. And it's like, okay.
I was really insecure about it, honestly.
Right.
Yeah. I was really insecure about it. And a lot of the people I talk to now, like the people that feel the need to like try to tell me all the, reasons why, I'm like, dude, I understand why you believe and I'm hearing you, but you have to understand that doesn't make me believe. Like,
right.
I just don't. Right. Like, and like, everybody would like to know like reasons for it, but I think it's hard with religion. I heard a debate between like, oh shoot, Felicia knows these people, but they were like two of the big things, like Ben Shapiro and Sam Harris. And they were trying to debate religion, and it was like the Tyson Jake Paul. Like seriously, it was like, dude, like you can't. At the end of the day, all you're doing is you can't win this one. This isn't a logical thing.
Yeah,
you can't prove to me with your evidence that there's no God, and you can't prove to me that there is. Like. Right. You just have to accept that this is something that's very personal to people. Sure. I know some of the smartest people I've ever known are deeply religious, and some of the dumbest people I know have been deeply religious, and vice versa.
Right.
And so, I've known a lot of smart people that are atheists too, and vice versa. So, I just think it's one of those things. For me, my personal journey is I think I was still calling myself a Christian, probably up until like 2006 or so.
Okay.
And it was actually a person, it's the person I thought about when you said, hey, if I've got an open mind and you challenge me, I'm going to be open to it. And I was talking to this person who was the most religious person I ever knew. He was religiously atheist. I mean, he was angry and atheist. He grew up with religion being a really dark part of his life. And so he had anger towards it. So he was very religiously atheist, right?
Right.
but he challenged me on a lot of my like beliefs. He was like, "Do you really think this? Do you really think that?" And I'm talking to him, and then finally I
Mhm.
was like, "Dude, you know what? You're right. I don't believe.
Right.
I just don't." And I'm telling you, like that was one of the most spiritual moments I've ever had in my life.
Mm.
The feeling I got from that honesty with myself was it felt like deeper than anything I ever got at a church camp when I really, when we were all crying because we, felt so guilty about, our sinly nature and all that stuff and hoped that God would accept us, right? Like it felt deep, right? And then since that time, since I kind of acknowledged that, hey, this is actually how I feel, I was not really fully being honest with myself. I don't believe the stories.
Mhm.
And then you start really thinking, you obsess on it. You go, what do I feel? And then I came to the fact that I feel like I really don't know.
Mm.
I feel like I don't know. And I feel like I'm just going to have to be okay with that
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
um,
Well, I'll tell you, I have a respect for the agnostic viewpoint, in some ways more than I do like an atheistic, viewpoint, just because I feel like from the atheistic side, it's so final, right? It's almost like I've proven there is no God, Christopher Hitchens or Richard Dawkins, or science has proven God doesn't exist, and I'm like, has it? I mean, because if it has, I'll believe it. I mean, if you can show me that, I'll abandon all my belief in God right this second, you know. But that, of course, that doesn't exist. They're looking at certain things and they're viewing it through a certain eyes, certain
a myopic lens.
yeah, exactly. Um, so I respect the agnostic view in the sense that at least you're willing to admit, you know what, there could be. I don't know. Like you're basically saying, I'm not really seeing any evidence as of yet that would lead me to believe in a God. But that doesn't mean I'm slamming the door on the possibility of that evidence presenting itself at some point in my life. Right.
Well, I would even argue further that I've felt things that could be spiritual and it could be godly if
Hmm.
I don't know, but
Okay.
it also could be something else. I don't know.
Sure. Sure.
Because I felt those kind of feelings with different things in my life, I guess,
Hmm.
and they haven't, what I was attributing that spiritual feeling to one thing that I knew, which was, going to church camp or going to church. I used to go to church too. I don't know if you remember that one.
I do. Yeah. Well, you used to go to Grace Baptist Youth Group,
Just
and
yeah, just on my own. Like my
yeah,
parents grew up with my parents being religious, but I kind of
right.
like I wanted this. I was a pretty troubled kid. I don't know if you
Sure.
remember that either, but
Yeah.
my parents had it wasn't a great life at home that I had,
Hmm.
and so I was searching for something to make me whole, right? And it felt it felt like that was that when I was young,
Hmm.
and then and so I was doing that, and I always struggled with some of the stuff, like the stuff that they would say, hey, you need to have, you need to have faith. You need to take this information, and it's okay to question things, but you need to end at this result. And I always struggled with that a little bit, but I think a lot of Christians do. And it wasn't
Yeah.
until I had that moment where I like kind of that epiphany, and then like I said, I had that started having, and then I've had spiritual moments since then, where um like maybe like understanding something deeper, like
Hmm.
connecting to myself,
Hmm.
or to Felicia,
Right.
or when my kids, like that connection has been spiritual for me.
Sure.
And so,
Yeah. Well,
like
the term spiritual is one of those terms. It's like, what I mean, what are we even talking about, right? That can mean so many different things. I mean, because we're talking about our bodies, and I think you and I would, well, maybe we won't agree on this. I would think we would agree on this, but maybe not. Our who we are as people, we have a physical, right? This is our physical body, right? And we live in it or whatever. But do you believe that we have a soul or a spirit, or no? Or do you think we're all we are is our flesh, our human side?
I really think we have a spirit.
Okay. That's what I
But I
thought.
do,
That's what I assumed.
I do ask sometimes, like, I mean, when I'm being honest with myself, I have to ask, like, is that just what it feels like to have
Hmm.
this higher intelligence with these higher order needs?
Right.
Like we're not just over here surviving anymore. We're over here talking about politics that have no impact on us directly
Sure.
in our lives. We will have, we're arguing about this thing that we care about this is what, is this what higher intelligence looks like? Is this how
Right.
it feels? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Right.
If a little insect was as smart as we were, and over here talking about the insect, politics, would they feel that? Like, oh man,
Yeah. How do we know
I'm
they're not?
feeling deep about this. Then maybe they are. I don't know.
I mean, how do
I
we
don't know.
how do we know the ant doesn't have those thoughts?
I don't know.
How do we gauge that? I mean, how could we even study something like
What
that?
a cop out, right? I just get to say I don't know, and then
We're
but it's
bigger
true.
than you, therefore you're
it's-
stupid.
Yeah, it's true though. I really don't know is the answer. And I talked about how like I feel that if you're going to have a strong opinion about something, a strong belief,
Mhm.
then you should have put in some work to arrive at it.
I'm with you.
And some of
Yes.
and some of that has to be, you have to challenge yourself. And when people do that and they come out the end and they're deeply religious or somewhat religious or whatever, right? Like I'm happy for them. I really like genuinely am. And
Right.
I mean, I've helped people through religious like faith issues as an agnostic. They've come to me for, Christians have come to me for guidance on this stuff because I
That's
think
awesome.
because I understand the challenges, and they felt safe with me because they know I'm not judging them. I don't think any less of them. I have my beliefs, but I can also understand. I think a lot of our things that if I grow up knowing Christianity or if I grow up knowing Buddhism, I'm going to orient the world around me and everything I feel, every experience I have to Buddhism. Like that is how, I mean, it's how I was raised. I grew up in China my whole life or in a part of China that's Buddhist, right?
Sure.
I grew up in Tibet or whatever. And that is, the whole universe is that to me.
Right.
Is someone going to come in and expect that like, well, no, I told you like, that's wrong. Like, oh, okay.
Right.
Like, no, like
Yeah.
I have felt that. Like I felt the presence of God, when I'm meditating and I levitated, 2 inches off the ground or whatever I did. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, it's such a deeply personal thing. Like, like I said, like, I mean, I don't care what 2 experts you get. They could be the 2 highest intelligent beings. Maybe those 2 are, Ben Shapiro and Sam Harris. They certainly are good debaters.
Sure.
But they didn't get anywhere in that conversation.
Right.
It was boring.
Well, so here's what I would say is the problem with that. I agree with what you just said. And I think the reason why what you just said is true is because when it comes to things like God or the existence of God or even getting even deeper and looking at which of the religions is true or not true and all that, whenever we use the word prove, we're already off the mark. Like I'm not interested in trying to prove to somebody that God exists, nor do I think I can prove to somebody that God exists. I don't think an atheist can prove to me that God doesn't exist. I don't think proof is not what we're looking for. At least that's not what I'm looking for. But I do look at evidence, right? Now, I can look at a certain amount of evidence on one side of the fence, some evidence on the other side of the fence, and I can try to come to a logical conclusion or a rational conclusion based on, the evidence that I'm seeing, right? And of course, the atheist side is going to provide all their evidence to say, well, here's why I don't believe God exists. And then the Christian's going to say, well, here's all the reason why I think God does exist. And then I can look at all that and say, okay, what's more plausible here? What's going to have the most evidence, right? So to start by saying that, and then I want to go back to earlier when I was talking about the idea of just God, just the generic God, creator of the universe, right? So when we look outside, we look around, we look at our world, we look at, our families, all this stuff, animals, plants, minerals, all just the earth, right? Universe, sky, all that stuff. And then we come to the question of why, right? Why is it here? Why did we, why are we on earth? Why are we able to procreate? Why are we born as babies and then we grow up? Like all this stuff, right? So when you ask yourself that question, kind of like the why are we here, the how are we here, what is the solution that you put in that to that question?
I don't have one.
Okay.
And I don't need one. I mean, I think sometimes people force themselves into a conclusion there. And I think there's a lot of things in our society like shame and doubt and, that kind of like pressure people into feeling like, no, I got to make a call on this. Like I have to weigh the evidence and I have to make a conclusion.
Right.
I just refute that. I don't have to come to a conclusion on it. I really don't know.
I agree that you don't have to.
The answer could be there is no reason.
Sure. Right.
And as far as how it could be, I mean, like they came up with the Big Bang Theory. Okay, what? Like, I don't know. Or it could be that there's a creator, or it could have been aliens dropping us off in a little spaceship and little, sea planning things. Like I really don't.
Yeah. Yeah. So I agree with you that you don't have to come to a conclusion, right? There's no mandate that says you have to. Yeah. Right. But would you agree though that do you think it's an important question, or like not at all? Who cares? It doesn't make any difference at all.
I think it can be. I think it depends. I mean, to a person, it might be the most important question. But to me, it's kind of like, okay, I accept that I can't know this answer.
Okay.
Like I can't. Like maybe you can, but I can't. Like I just can't. Like, and that's where the honesty with myself came in.
Yeah, but in theory, as a human, I'm a human, you're a human. Let's say hypothetically, I can come to that conclusion. I'm not saying I can. I'm just saying hypothetically, because you said that. Then that should mean you can also, right?
Yeah,
at some point.
With my mind and my brain, my soul, whatever, right? Like I have not been able to come to that conclusion.
Right, so have not been able to. Yes.
Okay.
Doesn't mean you can never.
Okay. Oh, all right. Sorry. Yeah. Semantics. But
I know. Yes.
What I mean is, I am not currently able to come to that conclusion.
Okay.
So for me, I accept that. I accept that, and here I am. Like I get this one earthly life to live, right? And so I'm going to live it the best way I can.
Sure.
And every moment means a ton to me, and I try really hard to live it the best I can, to understand as much as I can, to be a positive part of other people's lives as much as I can, and that's what drives me.
Sure. So I'm gonna use a couple hypotheticals, which I don't necessarily like, but it kind of gets the point. So like hypothetically, if there's a God and he created the earth and he created the universe and he created you and me, if that was true, again, hypothetical for the sake of the argument, if that was true, would you think that would be a good question or a good quest in life to figure out who that person was that did that, or who that being was that did that?
Yeah.
Okay. Good answer, dude.
Was that right?
That was the correct answer. Yes, that was 100% the correct answer. So when I look at kind of like evidence, and again, I mean, I don't even know. I guess I should give you a little background. I mean, I don't really even know if you know where I'm coming from. But I believed in God my whole life. There was never a point in my life that I can remember being an atheist. But that being said, I hated religion. I hated Christians the most of all, which is why I used to make fun of you when you come back from church camp, because of all the religions that I saw, the Christians were the only ones saying, we are the only way. Jesus is the only way. All these other ones would say like, oh yeah, Buddhism is a way, Hinduism. Yeah, it's a good way to live your life, all this stuff. Jesus is saying, I'm the only way. And I didn't like that. I thought that was bullcrap, narrow-minded, all kinds of stuff. So anyway, I hated Christians. And then when I was about 24, I became one. Right. So it was like this weird paradox for me where I basically became what I hated. But in the beginning of that, I was met with all these questions. Like I was questioning my beliefs. I was questioning whether or not this was the real deal. Is this all in my head? Is this just emotional? Is this just something that I want to be true? So that kind of led me down this road of looking for evidence, right? Which some believers would say you can't look for evidence. It's faith-based, it's spiritually based. There's no evidence. It's just faith. Just believe by faith. That never flew for me. I don't like that in any aspect of life. I don't care what it is. You tell me, well, Ryan, how do you know this is true? Well, I really don't. I'm just believing it by faith. Well, no. Do you know how to fly that plane? No, but I mean, I'm just believing it by faith. I'm going to go ahead. I'll get us to our destination. I'm not getting on the plane with you because you have not shown me evidence that you know how to fly a plane. Anyway, I'm trying to put this all in a nutshell because I don't want to take up too much time with my story. But that led me down this road where I was really questioning things and I was reading books by atheists, reading books by agnostics, reading books by other religions, that were not just talking about their own religion, but like literally attacking Christianity and trying to show the reasons why Christianity is not true. Again, it's just the kind of mind that I have. I've always been away with everything. So anyway, so now going back to what I said, I'm saying if we just look at the evidence for a creator or a God, and this is where I kind of start talking about like intelligent design theory, right? Which I'm sure you've heard of, but it's basically the belief that we don't necessarily know who the designer is. We don't know if he's God. We don't know if it's a space alien. We don't know if it's an energy force. We don't know, but there's evidence that something intelligent created everything. And the reason why they hold that belief is because everything that we have ever seen that's a created anything, we know that it had a creator, right? If we go to New York City and we're standing in front of the Empire State Building or whatever, we're looking up, and I say to you, nothing created this building. It just appeared here one day, and a bunch of pieces of rock and glass and steel all just kind of came in a tornado and they smashed together and they created what we see as this big building with elevators and all this stuff in it, right? Now, you would probably, if I was making that claim to you, you'd probably say you're a whack job. That's absolutely ludicrous to think that this building just disappeared, right? We might not know the builder. We've never met him. We don't know his name. We don't know anything about him, but just looking at that building tells us something created this building. So the intelligent design people would say, looking at creation, looking at plants, animals, looking at people and emotions and brain waves and looking at the earth and how humans and animals just need a certain kind of air to breathe to stay alive. They just need a certain amount of nutrients and foods and vitamins and all this kind of stuff. They need water, and the earth just has all those things, right? They see a design there. So I guess my question to you is, when you look at that theory alone, again, we're not talking about Jesus or God or Allah or any of that stuff. Do you see any kind of evidence for that? Or do you think it's okay?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. So you could buy into the intelligent design theory.
I understand why people believe that. I don't necessarily believe that. Does that make sense? Can you see that something makes sense without believing it necessarily, or
yes,
disbelieve?
Right.
So that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah. So I guess that's what I'm asking you is like, what makes you not believe that?
It's not that I don't believe that.
Okay.
I guess that's, you know what I mean? Like, I know that's really hard for some people. Like, I've got a friend that he just can't accept that I don't choose something. Like, it just drives me nuts.
Yeah.
And yet he always says, like, man, some of the stuff you say, I swear you should be a minister. Like, I'm like, dude, there's other wisdom that people gain in the world that doesn't come from a dogmatic, source, I mean, that, like,
I agree.
And that's why there's so much, in common with all the, the dogmas,
Mm-hmm.
like it really is. But here's the thing, like, who created the creator? Right. I'm sure you've been asked that before.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, of course.
Right. What's the evidence to say that something created the creator? At a certain point, you have to go, okay, I don't know, but something didn't come from nothing.
Well, but I would say my answer to that would be that the farther eventually you're going to have to get to a point where there is an uncreated creator. Right. Otherwise, you're going to go back in eternity. So my belief would be that the God, the creator, is that uncreated creator. Like, he is the beginning of all things.
So you can understand, if somebody was looking at this objectively, how they could see that, different people might choose where in the logical, cycle do you say, okay, from here, this is where I believe that something started. Well, sure. So I mean, that's why I don't know.
Right.
I don't know, but I understand I understand why people believe in intelligent design.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and why there's a lot of deists out there that don't necessarily subscribe to a religion, but they're like, I know there's something.
Right.
You
Yeah, but
know?
I guess what I'm asking, let me word it this way. What I'm
Yeah.
asking you is, what is preventing you personally from jumping onto that side of the fence and saying, I believe in intelligent design?
Because I don't necessarily believe, because I wouldn't be shocked if I found out that it wasn't true.
Okay.
I don't think, like, I understand why people believe it, but I also don't think that evidence is facts. And
Okay.
I think a lot of times what we consider evidence is kind of like, I don't know, like, you already are kind of looking at things a certain way, to consider certain things evidence, right?
Yes.
Because I think you could turn it the other way if you look at different evidence, right? And so if I see it that way, and if I don't consider that evidence enough evidence to be considered a fact for myself, why would I say this is what I believe if I don't necessarily,
Right.
if I don't know?
No, yes, totally. 100%. Yes. I totally understand what you're saying. And I agree with you. But I guess like I wouldn't call them facts either. I wouldn't say that the evidence that makes me believe in intelligent design is facts, like necessarily, because if that was the case, you could stamp it on a paper and say that nobody can refute that. It's irrefutable.
If it's enough evidence that you believe it to be true.
Right. And the question
I don't know how much evidence I would need or what,
right.
If there's like, I don't know, because it's one of those things where like I would have to get there and then I'd probably be able to tell you what took me over the top.
Well, sure. Right. But I mean, like for me, I look at stuff like that and I think, okay, but what's the alternative? Right. So I look at some other possible factors. How did we get here? Did we have a creator, not have a creator? So there'd have to be another or other multiple, maybe even theories of that conclusion, right? We are here, we exist, we have all these things. What's the conclusion there? Now we could just say, I don't give a crap. Who cares?
I believe it could possibly be something that we wouldn't know or understand.
Okay. But then do you see that there's evidence compelling you to that conclusion?
Like the evidence is just the reality that I believe that there could be something we don't know or understand and may never be able to understand.
Okay. And to you, is that more plausible than the intelligent design evidence?
Or
it's kind of the same.
I couldn't even rate them, man. Like I just don't think like that. I don't have like, let's say you're looking at like 10 awesome people. And someone says, well, what do you need to feel like number 3 is more awesome than number 5? You're like, right. I don't know. I like them both. Like, I understand they're both good people. Like, yeah, but tell me, like, why would you think number 5's been number 3? Number 5's got a master's degree. Number 3's only got a associate's degree, but they do help kittens on the weekend or whatever. Right. Like,
right. You have to weigh it. You have to weigh the pros and cons. Yeah, for sure.
Like there's a certain point where I feel like, and my friend is a good example, like it frustrates him that I'm actually okay with not coming to a conclusion. And yeah, that frustrates him. He's like, how can you not come to a conclusion? I'm like, right. I can't. That's part of my journey is like, it's not like I can't, like I don't want to, or I don't necessarily want to. I just, this is me being honest with myself. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. And I'm okay with that. And that's what really bothers some people and I understand why, because it's like, dude, I've been working really hard to be okay with this. And you're over here just being okay with not being okay with not knowing it,
sure. Sure.
And I understand why that would be frustrating, but it's just, that's just who I am.
Yeah. Yeah. And I understand. Again, it doesn't frustrate me per se. I mean, I guess the way my mind works is different. So I can't like understand. I mean, I understand, obviously I hear what you're telling me. Like I get it. But like, for me, I feel like that's just something that, not that I have to have an answer, but at least that it would be intriguing enough for me to be interested in it, And I think that's kind of what led me down the path in general, was just like, again, hating Christianity, hating all of it, and just saying, well, is there a God? If so, who is he? Is kind of to me, that's something that I want to strive for the answer, right? Even if I might never necessarily get there.
But don't mistake being okay with not having an answer with apathy.
Okay.
Because I'm not apathetic to it. I've been studying this my entire life.
Hmm.
I've been observing, I've been looking.
Right.
I mean, being okay with not having a final answer, that is only like a foul to someone who thinks that there is a final answer and that
Hmm.
I should be trying to find it.
Sure.
If I really believe that I'm not going to get the answer and not to, but I'm paying attention to everything in my life. I'm
Hmm.
paying attention to the world around me, paying attention to, like the whole thing, right?
Hmm.
I'm always paying attention. I'm never afraid to have the thought or to go
Sure.
there. I'm not trying to avoid it, but I don't know. I've accepted that I don't know,
Hmm.
and I'm not trying to pursue to know something that I don't think is knowable. Does that for me that wouldn't make sense, and that
Hmm.
and it's just it wouldn't make
Okay.
sense.
So I like the way you worded that. That helps me understand actually a little better where you're coming from when you just said it's something that not only that you don't know personally, it's something that you don't believe is knowable.
But, well, yeah, if I didn't feel that way, I'd probably be right in pursuit with you.
Right. Yes. And see, and now that's what I'm saying. That's why
Now I
that
get it.
makes now
Now
that
I get
makes
it.
more sense. Yeah, because where you're coming from, you're like,
I
well,
should probably say that to my friend.
yeah. Just have them listen to this episode, man. It'll help promote my show.
Yeah.
um, yeah, because to you it almost maybe feels like a fool's errand, and this is I've heard this kind of viewpoint before that if it's something that you don't really think there's ever going to be enough evidence on one side or the other to completely convince you, then why waste your time?
And I want to
Just
qualify that.
okay,
I think that would be a fool's errand for me.
okay,
Yeah, I mean that does not mean I think that's a fool's errand for someone else
right,
because I might be wrong and it might be knowable and it's really important to them. Even if it's not knowable, if it's really important to them and it helps orient them in their lives, then why would I feel threatened by that? The only way I would feel threatened by that if I was not comfortable with my own beliefs. I mean, I shouldn't be bothered if someone wants to believe and keep pursuing the truth for them.
sure,
Even if I don't agree with them, why would that bother me? I just
right, right,
that always gets me, for with the people that do feel threatened by like you
hmm,
not understanding what they understand and what they think they know.
hmm,
It's like, why do you feel threatened by it? Like, why is it threaten you? Like
right,
I'm saying, go for it, dude. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you. Like you're using this as your orienting principle in life.
hmm,
Not just for the utility of it, but it means something to you. And why would I have anything against that?
right.
I'd have to be really insecure about my beliefs to do that.
Sure, sure. But I mean, to kind of use a hypothetical again, if Christianity is true, is your friend a Christian?
Yeah.
Okay. So if Christianity is true, then he believes that you in your lack of belief are in danger, right?
True.
So it's not because he wants to necessarily win an argument with you, or he's so offended by the fact that you don't care enough to believe either way, one or the other. He's literally loves you enough to care enough for you to want you to believe that, right? And again,
I
this is
think that
hypothetical.
I think that's an awesome thought, and I do think
Mhm.
that's possible, but I don't think that's what's driving that. I
Okay.
think in most people, I mean, I do love I think that altruism to some degree actually exists. It is a real
Mhm.
thing to want to do something because it's just the right thing for other people.
Right.
But I think that we're twisted up, all of us, and I think that there's usually other things that are kind of driving that. And not that I think it's it's malintent. I don't think he wants harm for me.
Right.
I just think it bothers him, and I think some people are just bothered by like I don't know.
Yeah.
I think I understand it. I mean,
Sure.
I think I can kind of get where he's coming from, but at a certain point, you just have to understand, like, dude, sometimes people just think they just feel differently,
Right.
and you can't really like you don't want to. I try not to like undermine someone else's experience. Like they feel strongly about something, like I don't need to challenge that. Like
Right.
you have a reason to feel that way.
Right.
Doesn't mean I believe the same conclusion that you do, but like it's cool.
Right. Right.
Get it?
Yeah, for sure. And I get it. I understand, but I know for me, I don't think I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for other Christians or God believers of all shapes. But I know for me, it's not a frustration for me. Like I completely 100% support everyone's right to believe whatever they want. I really do. But the other side of that coin is the care that I have because of what I believe. And again, it's all hinges on whether or not what I believe is true. Because if what I believe is true, then all of those that don't believe what I believe are headed towards a cliff that they can't see, but I can see it, right? So, and if I'm wrong, if what I believe is wrong, then none of it matters anyway. But if what I believe is true, then that's why I have compassion and I have sympathy, and I do want to at least try, not in a mean, nasty, I hate you if you don't believe what I believe kind of way, but in a loving way, have productive conversations about whether or not this is true or not, and kind of maybe share some things about how I got to that place where I started believing what I didn't believe. I mean, so I guess that's kind of the part of understanding that's important for the person on the other side of the fence to realize for a well-meaning Christian, because that's kind of the way they see it. I mean, again, I just said I'm not speaking for other Christians, and I am speaking for other Christians. But I mean, I guess if they believe what Christianity teaches, then that's the way they're seeing it. And if you see somebody you love and care about heading towards a cliff that they can't see, what would you do? Like if you put yourself in a physical area, like you're at the Grand Canyon and your children, one of your kids is walking towards a cliff they can't see, you're going to run over there as fast as you can.
I mean,
tackle them to the ground.
I used to be right there. I mean, I do understand that.
Right.
I really do.
Right.
I always wonder, like, how to, and I should be smarter on like what the doctrine is, I guess. But like, how does that work for like a Muslim that's like, are they trying to like spread their version of like the Quran? Mm-hmm. And what is their discussion like? Is it just rooted? I mean, would it be very similar?
Similar, except for Jesus not being the sole.
But that would be the key thing, right?
Well, I mean, there's many other differences for sure.
I mean, that's the differentiator in like who gets in.
Yeah, because again, and going back to what I struggled with when I was anti-Christian and I hated all of it, was that statement Jesus made, where he says, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father but through me." That's very exclusive, right? That's not all roads lead to heaven kind of a theology. So there's a few options you could take. Maybe Jesus was wrong, or maybe Jesus never even said that. Maybe some guy just wrote it in the Bible and he wanted Jesus to say that, and Jesus never actually said that. Maybe Jesus never even existed. There's all these possibilities. But again, if we're looking at a hypothetical, and if we're assuming for the sake of the argument that Jesus did say that, okay, and he was telling the truth, then that means anyone who's not going through Christ is not going to.
I mean, like, that's like bread and butter to me. Like, I totally get that. I really do.
Yeah.
And I do understand that there are cases where that's the main driver. But I also think, if I'm being totally honest, I think a lot of times that's actually not the main driver for why people get like passionate about this. I don't think everybody's trying to necessarily like, save everybody's soul. I think that Christians are human beings as well, and they get twisted up in all the same things that the rest of us do, including insecurity, self-doubt, and I think that there's a lot more of that going on than just like, if I'm acting passionate about this and I'm challenging you on it, like it's only because I want to save your soul. I don't think I think that could be the case for some people. That might be the case for you, but I don't think that's the case for everybody.
Oh, I agree with you completely. Yeah. I mean, everybody's going to be different. I guess the appeal I'm making is that that's the claim of Christianity itself.
Yeah.
Maybe leave the Christians out of it for a second and say, they're all going to have different motives necessarily. There could be people that are just churchgoers that aren't even really actually Christians. They're just believers in the religious system, and they go faithfully and they serve
They
and
like
they do
the
all this stuff.
community.
Yeah, they like the community. And and there's something to be said for that. There's been studies that have shown that even if there is no God, even if God does not exist, people that believe he does are just better members of society for the most part, right? They're more loving, they're more caring because they have a higher power that they're accountable to, right? Whether he's real or not, right? Even their false belief in him is giving them a sense of purpose and a sense of love towards others and giving and caring, which can be beneficial to society. And I've even heard atheists argue that even though they in their view, God does not exist. There's no way God exists.
I think you'd have to be anti-religion to not see the utility in society that religion has provided.
Right.
And the guy that I was talking about, he was definitely that. He was anti-religion. He wasn't just an atheist. He was anti-religion. And he was kind of more, he subscribed more to like religion is the, basis of all war and everything that's wrong in the world, which I think is absurd. Well,
that's Richard Dawkins' view also.
I think there's a lot of people that think that, but I think it's, I don't agree with that.
Sure.
There was a South Park episode I really liked where, I don't know if you saw this, but like Cartman goes way into the future. So the Xbox will have come out. He accidentally time travels way into the future. And they've abolished religion throughout the galaxy or whatever. And now like there's two races of humans and a race of otters that are all at war with each other. Hyperintelligent otters. They're all at war with each other for having inferior logic.
Oh, wow. That's so funny.
For disbelieving.
You gotta appreciate South Park because love it or hate it, the one thing that can be said about them from the beginning is that nobody's off limits.
Yeah.
They don't choose a side and say, we're only going to make fun of conservatives. We're only going to make fun of Christians. We're only going to make fun of Buddhists. We're only going to, they make fun of everybody equally.
In that case, they were making fun of people that illogically blame the religion for the sources of all evil on earth.
Right.
And I thought it was pretty clever, actually.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think those guys are very, very, very smart guys. But I have only seen, I think I've seen like the first 3 seasons. And I haven't seen nothing since. I've seen a couple select episodes. Somebody had showed me one where the guy was doing like a Trump impersonation or something he thought was good. I don't remember what episode. It was more recent. But yeah, as far as watching full episodes, probably just the first 3 seasons I've seen way back when those came out. And then when was that? 90, 97, 98, somewhere around there was when that show first started. So I do want to clarify too, as we wrap this up, but I also consider myself to be anti-religious. I don't like religion at all. I shouldn't say that. I see the benefits to what I just said, right? I think there's a human benefit to religious people and people observing religion. I think that can be beneficial to society. But when it comes to my actual spiritual side of things and my spiritual beliefs, I don't really like religion very much. I don't think Jesus liked religion. I think I read the Gospels, and what I see Jesus continually arguing with the religious people of the day, which in that sense was the religious Jews of the day they were constantly at odds with each other. So it's like, I mean, I don't really think he was religious. I don't consider myself to be religious, but I do consider myself to be a Christian. And people say, well, that's a religion. It's like, okay, you got me. That's true. It's considered a religion.
So I understand what you mean in the context that you mean. And when I was I believe that you can be extremely religious without being religious, but depending on the context that you mean the term, like Christianity is a religion. So you know what I mean? But I get what you're saying. You're talking about organized religion that organizes itself, tries to standardize beliefs, and then usually tries to put a human in between you and God.
Bingo.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. And I felt the same way when I was a Christian. That's the same way I feel. And I totally get that. So I was, eventually I stopped going to church, but man, I was still reading. I was still studying, and I was still praying. And I felt more of a connection then than I did when I was going to church and just listening, being indoctrinated by humans that were doing the best they could, but like honestly, they weren't fully trained.
Yeah. And sadly, that's the case a lot of times. And people think just because someone's a pastor that he can speak for God or that he even understands even the scriptures. A lot of times that's not even true. Like he went to Bible school, he got a degree, and now he became a pastor. Okay. Like what does that mean? You know?
Right.
So all right. So the last thing I'm gonna kind of just poke back to here, just because I'm curious. Earlier when you were talking about how you don't necessarily see a way to know, and you're not really pursuing that in your own life. But then you also said you're observing, you keep watching things, you keep looking at things. Like, I guess what I'm getting at is listening to you talk, at least some of the things you're saying, it sounds to me like there still might be a little interest there. Like, I don't think it doesn't sound like you completely don't care at all and you've written it off.
Okay. I'm glad you heard that, because that's exactly right. And that's the point I was trying to make. And I think that's where people honestly get, like, it's hard to empathize with somebody that's got a completely different orientation towards this stuff than you do. Like, It's hard for a person to do that because it is such a passionate thing. Like, this is the thing, right? And so that's the exact point I was trying to make. I'm absolutely curious about it. Me feeling like this is unknowable, that doesn't mean I'm not listening and taking account of everything that I observe in the world. I'm not shutting it out with a no, I'm agnostic filter. Like, no, I need to filter this out because I need to stick to my agnostic beliefs. Like, I'm not doing that at all. I am absolutely, like, listening, paying attention, and open to it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Cool, man.
Yeah. I kind of like, I guess that's kind of I wish more people could kind of see it that way. But that's why I was like bringing up the Shapiro and the Sam Harris like debate, because it's these are two really smart people that if you put them with someone who wasn't ready with a bunch of facts, they would go at them and they would own them, right? On like, I just gave you a million pieces of evidence on why you're wrong. Yeah. But when it comes to this, I mean, I don't know. I think when people push really hard, I do think it's a little bit condescending, like, because you're assuming that the person really hasn't thought about it. Right. And I don't know many people that I don't think actually don't think about this stuff. I think I think most people think about it. So I think that to think like, oh, well, I've thought about this more than you because I've got this belief system. Right. I think that's condescending, but I don't even get mad about it. I'm just like, yeah. It's fine.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think most people do think about it, and I think my personal belief on that is that it's because it is one of the biggest questions that we could ever ask. Like, I mean, whether or not there's a creator of the universe. I mean, that's a big important question, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
why? It's the first and last why.
Right.
And it's the first and last how.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. And that's why I don't. Yeah, it's hard for me to believe people when they say, well, I don't really care either way. It's like, well, I think you do at least a little bit, and that's why I'm glad I asked you that and you clarified, so.
Yeah, I'll never say I don't care because it's not how I feel. I care. I don't know. Right.
Yeah. How about pineapple on pizza? Do you care about that?
It's terrible. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I used to like it. I used to like it. I don't like it anymore. I've become kind of like a
pizza snob.
I really just like pepperoni and cheese.
Oh, you're boring, dude.
I don't eat pizza. I don't eat pizza very much anymore. Yeah. Because I'm trying to get to 50 and work out to impress the ladies that I can't.
That's right, dude. That's right, man. You got to get it going.
But I've become a traditionalist with pizza. I like pepperoni and cheese, which is funny because I was a bougie little turd back when I worked at Arnoldi's, and I used to put artichoke hearts and linguiça and feta and all this stuff.
That's the good stuff, dude. That's the good stuff, man. I remember that when I first started hanging out with you and your family, me and my family were Domino's people because that's really the only pizza I'd ever had. And you and your family were Giovanni's.
Oh yeah, Giovanni's.
And then I had Giovanni's at your house one time, and I slept over there, and I told my parents, this is the greatest pizza ever.
It was good.
Yeah, dude. So then we started doing that. And then I remember the next time I came over to your house,
We were getting Domino's.
yeah, you were like, oh yeah, we get Domino's all the time. And I was like, no, don't do it. Terrible. So
You were like, dude, why don't you believe in something? And here we are today.
yeah, I'm like, if there's anything worth pondering after, it's this question.
You've never changed, Cooper.
Yes, where's the greatest pizza place in town? You know,
Oh,
but then
man,
this is all before we had ever had Arnaldi's, and come to think of it now, dude, you were there at so many milestones in my life. We were both there the day that I got offered the job at Arnaldi's.
Yeah.
Because we were there for a pizza party.
Yeah.
And we're eating pizza, and then the guy comes out, he's like, hey, any of you guys 18? And a bunch of us were like, yeah. And he's like, anybody want a job? And I was like, okay. I was working at Taco Bell at the time. I was like, I don't need to work at Taco Bell. And then, and then that started.
Me, then
dude,
you,
everybody.
Then my friend Benny Kwan.
Yeah, that's right. He worked there too. Yeah. Did you know?
I ended up training him.
Yeah.
And then I went and worked at Giovanni's until I joined the Air Force.
You worked at Giovanni's? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, trip out as a driver?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I had no idea about that.
Yeah, it was better. Like you got paid on time.
Yeah.
Like it was actually like a business.
You could actually cash your paychecks?
Yeah.
Oh, get out of town, dude.
Yeah, I never had a late paycheck. Everything. Yeah. It was like a real job.
You mean you actually got paid for doing the work that you were doing? Wow.
I did, yeah.
That's amazing. Do you remember Pat Silva?
Yeah.
Okay. He owns the pizza place that I work at now.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. Him and his wife own it. Well, it's Ricky's.
Yeah.
So did you work with Ricky?
Yeah, it was Rick's.
Yeah. So Ricky, that used to be a cook at Arnaldi's, he started his own place called Ricky's House of Pizza. And then he owned it for forever. And I used to work as a cook for him way back in 20 some years ago. Wow. And then he ended up selling it like, I think two years ago now, I think, to Pat and Jen Silva. And now I just work as a driver. I just a couple nights a week for extra money. So
nice.
Yeah, it's cool stuff, man. So
that's
all
crazy.
right, dude. Well, thanks. This was a lot of fun.
It was fun. I hope I was an okay guest.
You were, dude.
I mean, this is by far the first time I've done anything like this, so I'm a little bit nervous. Like,
yeah,
like how I'm gonna sound because, yeah.
Well, I can beat you to the punch.
I absolutely took all the guards off, and I was just completely honest with you, and that's what I wanted to challenge myself to do.
Yeah.
The only reason why I did this was because I was like asking myself, like, why? It was eating at me, like, why am I afraid to do this?
Yeah.
Because I don't like that, right? I want to challenge. Like, I need to understand, why am I afraid to do this? Because I was afraid to do it.
Yeah.
And I had to really think about it, and then I was like, This is silly. I need to get over myself. It's okay to put yourself out there. And
nice,
I really wanted to just like overcome the fear. Mm-hmm. And honestly, the way you do it, like with your format, it makes it so easy because we were just BSing and catching up. And I forgot that I had a microphone right here most of the time. Honestly.
Oh, good.
Enjoying catching up with my best childhood friends. So
yeah,
it was just fun.
Good.
Man.
That's good, man. I'm glad you said it because that's exactly what I'm going for. I want it to feel like
you do really well with
just
it.
Just a casual
we were just BS
conversation. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally, man. Yeah. So cool.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Tell the family I said hi. It was awesome catching up with you, dude. We'll have to talk more often. Not necessarily on camera,
good,
but
man.
just stay in touch better and hang out. So, all right, man.
All right, brother.
Have a good night.
All right, be safe.
All right, thanks. You too. Bye. Thanks again for checking out this podcast, and please tell all of your friends about it. Don't let those shadow banning savages win the battle. Also, I would love to hear your feedback. You can contact me at whycan'twetalabout at proton.me. Make sure that you subscribe so that you will be notified whenever new episodes are released. Thanks.